Everyone got their orders, I guess.
Landon or Brandon, are we live yet?
For the record, that we no longer have to read the long full-page statement before we get started. So
It's a treat.
News.
Ready to
Good
go?
news.
And I think we are good to go. So you may call the meeting to order.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the June 8th, 2022 LCTCS Board of Supervisors. Steve Smith, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please, sir?
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I, if you don't mind, just a moment? One of the things that I always enjoy about this board being together and the Pledge of Allegiance is watching Supervisor Mickey Murphy salute the flag. Sir, appreciate your service and certainly appreciate all that you bring to this board. So thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. God bless America's right. Hoorah.
All right. Mr. Jim Raines, I'd like to invite you down to administer the oath of office to Matthew Durrett and Francesca Jimenez. Very good.
Over here, Francesca.
I, Matthew Durrett,
Solemnly swear.
I will support the Constitution
And the laws of the United States.
and the laws of the United States
And the Constitution and laws
Constitution and laws
of this state.
of this state,
That I will faithfully
and I will faithfully
and impartially discharge
and impartially discharge,
perform all the duties
perform all the duties
incumbent on me
incumbent on me
as a member
as a member
of the LCTCS
of the LCTCS
Board of Supervisors
Board of Supervisors
according to the best of my ability
according to the best of my ability
and understanding.
and understanding. So help me God. So help me God.
We'll take a moment to read a brief bio. Matthew Durrett is a student at Nunez Community College and will serve as a community college representative on the LCTCS Board of Supervisors. He is studying aerospace engineering. Matthew, would you like to say a few words? Bless you.
I want to thank you. Hello. I want to thank you all for inviting me to the board meeting. It's a tremendous honor. I have a great passion for education, aerospace engineering, and rocketry. It's just great to see so many people supporting education in Louisiana here. And I want to thank you all for inviting me.
Francesca Jimenez is a student at Fletcher Technical Community College and will serve as a technical college representative on the LCTCS Board of Supervisors. She completed a business administration associate's degree in December of 2021 and decided to continue her education and is studying office systems technology and accounting at Fletcher. like to say a word?
Hello? Okay. Hi, everyone. I just want to say thank you very much for this opportunity. When I moved to United States 5 years ago, I never imagined myself being here in the Board of Supervisors of the LCTC system. So I just want to say thank you to every one of y'all to accept us in here to represent the student members.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you both very much and welcome aboard.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just one quick point. When we talk about diversity, I don't think you could find a more diverse set of circumstances than we have in these two students. A student born in Venezuela who left her country because of political strife, comes to this country looking for the American dream and shows up at Fletcher Technical Community College and shows up on this board and represents thousands of students. It just doesn't get much better. And Matt, he's an inspiration just to watch, to see the enthusiasm that he has for education, to see the enthusiasm he has around rocketry. I can't wait to see how Matt and Francesca will change this board and this organization. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Yeah. Ms. Sarah, would you conduct a roll call, please?
Yes, sir, happy to. Supervisor Price,
Here.
Supervisor Mount is absent. Supervisor Jackson, Supervisor Bradford,
Present.
Supervisor Butler McIntyre, Supervisor Helen Carter, Supervisor Roman Hardy, Supervisor Tim Hardy, Supervisor Erica McConduit is absent. Supervisor Murphy, Supervisor Salath is absent. Supervisor Smith, Supervisor Spahn, Supervisor Toops, Supervisor Durrett, Supervisor Jimenez. Mr. Chair, you do have a quorum of the board present.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am. At this point, I'm sure everyone studied and read their minutes from the April 13th, 2022 meeting. Would someone like to make a motion to approve?
Motion by Mr. Spahn and a second by Mr. Toops.
A motion and seconds. Any more discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, that motion carries. Okay, it's come to me in my report, which will be brief.
Mr. Chairman, we also have to approve the agenda.
We didn't, getting ahead of myself.
Yes, sir.
I skip one. Okay, at this point, I would like to get a motion to approve the June 8, 2020 meeting agenda.
Motion, Mr. Roman Hardy, second by Ms. Bradford.
A motion and a second. Is any more discussion? Is any opposition? Hearing none, that motion carries. Now it's okay for me to go, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Y'all can't get rid of me quick enough, can you? Just a reminder, the Delta Community College Ruston campus ribbon cutting will take place at the Ruston campus tomorrow, June the 9th at 1 o'clock. Please let Sarah know if you're planning on attending. Other than that, I think that pretty well wraps up my report, Monty. I know yours won't be quite that brief, but
That's
it'll be
right.
close.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I have at least one item that is yours, and I will take an opportunity to commend our chairman, who serves as editor for Power Lines, a magazine that is sponsored by the rural cooperatives across the state of Louisiana. I guess, Mr. Chairman, you've been doing that for a number of years now and done it very, very well. At your place, members of the board, you have an editorial that was written by our chairman that was included as a part of the Power Lines magazine. But I also want to point out the incredible chicken thigh, honey pecan chicken thighs recipe on there. I wanted to make sure you saw that because I'm taking it home to my wife and asking, we got to do this together. I got to get in the kitchen, but don't look at the answers to the crossword at the bottom right. That's all I ask. But what a great job by our chairman in featuring the change that has occurred within our community and technical colleges in your time around the board. So thank you for taking the time to do that. Very well.
Pleasure. It was fun. It's easy to write about.
You Also have at your place an article that is defying the odds. And I know that Matthew, you will find this particularly of interest. It is a story of a young man who is a welding student at one of our colleges who is deaf. So when you begin to think about the impact of how you handle instruction for students in that environment, in a welding lab and sign language, just think about the impact and the hurdles that this gentleman has had to overcome across time. I encourage you to read it, to take the time just to understand some of the barriers that our students face every day. So jumping into the President's Report, or the meat of the President's Report, I want to thank a whole host of folks who were involved in our announcement with Entergy earlier this week. Late last week, Entergy announced a $1 million contribution to our MJ Mike Foster Promise Program effort. I want to especially thank Quentin Taylor, who's not able to be with us today. He's, as you know, on assignment at River Parishes and has some duties that are keeping him there today. But Quentin has been instrumental in maintaining that relationship across time. What is, I think, most important about the contribution is this is not Entergy giving dollars for scholarships. This is Entergy giving dollars to make sure that the people of Louisiana know about the MJ Foster Promise opportunity. We are afoot on a $5 million campaign over the next 3 years. We will be having another significant announcement here in the next week or so that I think you will be pleased by. We continue to make good progress toward that $5 million total. But the one thing I do want to share, and I want to say this publicly because I think it's important, particularly given the close of the session. Last week, we stood in the governor's press conference room on the 4th floor with the governor of Louisiana, the Speaker of the House, and the President of the Senate, and the President CEO of Entergy, all of whom shook hands and agreed, along with our commissioner, that the MJ Mike Foster Promise Program is one of the best things we've done in Louisiana in decades. When that group of 3 people agree at that level, we've done something right. I was proud as a citizen of this state to be able to have those 3 individuals together in front of press, shaking hands and agreeing on something. And I'll stop there. That was a lot of fun, but you did that. This organization has done an incredible job of creating opportunities for the people. Now it's time for us to go tell the story. So big announcement on last week, but we certainly look forward to having more of those. All right. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for your service to this board. I know we'll have an opportunity to honor you appropriately a little later, but I think it's important for this audience to know the amount of time, energy, and effort that it takes to be chair of this board is significant. It's not a 1-year assignment, it's a 2-year assignment. And I suspect about a year ago, our illustrious chairman was looking around thinking, my goodness, I got to do this for another year, but he did it, and he did it exceptionally well. He will always be the chair that led us through COVID. Just think about that. As you look back across time, COVID will be a marker in our lives forever. And this gentleman led us through that time, and he did it with an even hand. He did it in a way that made this organization better across time. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the chancellors, on behalf of every employee in this system, thank you. Thank you for what you've done on behalf of this board.
Thank you, Monty. I wasn't expecting that. Get ambushed right out of the chute. I was always kind of an introvert, and getting up in front of people is not necessarily my strong suit, but I've very much enjoyed my role as the COVID chair. And it's something I will never forget, certainly, but it was I guess it's just kind of the luck of the draw. It was, I didn't know what a Zoom meeting was 2 years ago, but boy, I know them now. And I know y'all do too. Y'all did a great job of facilitating and putting them all together. And it was an adventure. I guess that little column I wrote kind of is redundant and to talk about it again, but I went in started teaching on November the 8th of 1978. I walked in a classroom in Winsboro in drafting class, never taught a thing in my life other than maybe Bible school. And, it was a new adventure for me. And, 20 years later, I wrapped up a career as a teacher, and it was so interesting and very rewarding. I retired the same year the community college came into existence. My wife worked at the school that I retired from, and after I retired, it became an adventure with her because she was having to deal with all the changes that were going on, and I was getting to hear about them every day. So, it was certainly an adventure. When I got appointed to the board in 2009, it's been a very rewarding experience. Things have changed. Kid could walk in off the street and, 2 days, take a test, and 2 days later he would come to my class, and I'd hand him every book and every pencil and paper he needed to learn, and didn't cost him anything. I don't know if y'all picked up on it or not, but that's not the way it works now. And it's the ever-changing dynamics of higher ed. The community college system has evolved in the last 20 years into something that is really remarkable, because I was noticing I passed a couple of schools coming down here, and it's just remarkable the changes that have taken place. And y'all have done it. I mean, I'm board chair for a couple of years, but y'all are the guys out in the trenches, and y'all are the ones that make it happen. And y'all should be very proud of yourself and pat yourself on the back, because what y'all have done is really made a difference in the lives of a lot of people. And I can commend all of you for that, because I've seen it firsthand as a teacher, what education can do for a kid, and teaches them how to make a living, and making a living is important. And y'all have done it. And y'all and the people that work for you and work in this system should be very proud of themselves. So thank y'all for the kind words, and appreciate y'all putting up with me for 2 years, and we'll see how things go the rest of the day.
Chairman, if you will, we'd like for you to join us up front for a presentation of the award. A white move there. Did you see that? Man, like
sometimes people ask, how far have you gone in education? What have you done? What level of education did you attain? 44 years of walking in, saying I didn't know even anything how to teach, to now 2 great years as being chairman, and one of those years, well, 2 of them really during COVID. I don't know that but you're a very, very small group of people who could have attained that. The only better position would be the chairman before you who didn't have to do COVID. So whoever that guy is really positions you well for success. I want to read this beautiful recognition for Mr. Price. Paul Price, Jr., Chair, Louisiana Community and Technical College System, Board of Supervisors, July of 2020 to June of 2022. In appreciation of your service, dedication, and commitment to making the LCTCS a world-class system. Your efforts will have a lasting effect on our system. We appreciate the outstanding job that you have done as our board chair. So we got to do this so Jimmy can get a picture of it.
Next, I'd like to ask members of the Chancellor's group to come forward and talk a little bit about the campus transitions that are occurring. I'd like to ask Chancellors Aspinwall, Bateman, Sawtell, and Joe Marine, if you will, to join the group at the table. You'll recall that back in March, we took steps as an organization to realign campuses of Central Louisiana Technical Community College with other adjacent colleges to really give the college an opportunity to build a SACS candidacy application that was viable. And as we look back across that, at the time, it was a fairly stark decision. But what I know now is these chancellors have come forward, made it happen, including getting approval from SACS, including the people, the buildings, the budgets, all of the things that have to be transitioned. This is not easy work. One of the things that we fall victim to is sometimes we make it look easy. This is tough. There are not a lot of colleges across the country that are able to move campuses among colleges and do it as efficiently as this group. With that, perhaps I'll start, Chancellor Sawtelle, with you as the originating campus or college, and go from there.
Good morning, and thank you, Dr. Sullivan, Chair Price, members of the board. This is indeed one of those stories that began over a year ago with the board action in the spring of 2021. And from the word go of that board action, my colleagues to my right and left and the system office have supported this transition. The communities were made aware of it from the word go from them. If you want to know the canary in the coal mine or the proof in the pudding, it's what the communities feel. And these communities feel the embrace of Sewella Technical Community College and Bossier Parish Community College. And so there were no sudden motions. If anything, there's just been a fortification and a bolstering of the services that are offered in those areas. Up until we're in the home stretch of this, but up until this summer, our part in this is that we're going to continue on with these students will be with us at the beginning of the summer through the summer term, and then they will begin shortly thereafter with both of these colleges. I cannot thank these two chancellors enough for making these campuses blood relatives from the word go. And I want to thank our system office who has been that guide for us in terms of making sure that that was taken care of. So with that, Dr. Sullivan, I'll turn it back over to you, sir. Thank you.
Just a bit of an overview, and you guys can speak to these individually. There were 4 campuses that were initially involved in the transitions. Those were the Lamar Salter campus, which was transitioning to Sewella, the Sabine Valley, campus of Central that was to transition to Bipsy, along with the Natchitoches campus. And then initially we had the Avoyelles campus of Central that would transition to South Louisiana Community College. Ultimately, what we have arrived at is the 3 campus transition gives us enough of a budget headroom for Central to be able to be viable as a candidate. And so, Chancellor Bateman, I'd like for you, if you will, just to give a bit of an update as to where we are with the transition of both the Natchitoches campus as well as the Sabine Valley campus.
Chairman Price, Dr. Sullivan, thank you for this opportunity to update the board on this campus realignment. This is our first go round with a campus realignment. It's our opportunity to serve our region with multiple campuses. I too could not thank enough the gentleman at this table for the support provided over the last 14 months. But I would also want to extend some gratitude to the late Dr. Renee Cintron for the work that he did on this effort and the ongoing support that Dr. Amy Cable has provided. It's a first for us. It's not a first for our system by any stretch. There's a lot that's been learned along the way that's made it easier, quite honestly, for us. I think that we're doing it right. And I think evidence of that is the timely submission of our SACS substantive change application. An accreditation team visit to the campus, no findings, no recommendations, and extraordinarily confident that when the SACS board meets next week, that they will give final approval to this campus realignment effort. But Dr. Sawtelle said something a moment ago about the proof in the pudding, and it is what we're seeing from the communities that we've been invited to support more closely. And the evidence of that community support is seen in the scholarships that will soon be endowed for these 2 new campuses. The community has stepped forward to give to support the students at these locations. And then the community support that's come by way of grants that will help to support new programs at these locations. So it's fine to say the community supports you. It's much better to see the community supporting you with dollars. And that's been fun to be a part of. But again, it's a collective effort, and it's made easier on us because of folks that have paved the way. So thank you.
Mr. Aspinwall, about an update on the Lamar Salter campus.
Yes, Chairman Price, President Sullivan, members of the board, thank you very much for allowing, first of all, to me to work in this system and allow me to work with my two colleagues here. And I'll kind of echo what Jimmy and Rick has said, but the Lamar Salter campus has not been an easy feat. You know, it's not something that's new to us. We transitioned to Oakdale campus about 3 years ago. So the first hurdle was the SACS documentation. So that seems like an easy task, but it's not. But we were, like Dr. Bateman said, we're able to put that application together. We had our visit in April, and much like BIPSI, we've had no findings and no recommendations, which was a breather. You know, one of the first things that we learned when we transitioned to Oakdale campus is, and Jimmy started this process, is you have to make sure that the individuals at those campus are comfortable, because the first thing they begin to think is, I'm going to lose my job. These programs are going away. What's going to happen to this campus? So we made early visits and made them realize nothing's going to happen. You know, for the first year, we're going to keep you like you are. We're going to do a lot of assessment and determine what are the strong programs, what are the weak programs, what are the opportunities and the possibilities that we can expand. One of the things that helps Sewella is that it puts us on the front porch of Fort Polk. And now that the campus is SACS accredited, it allows those active duty soldiers and their families to be able to transfer credits. So that will help with our enrollment. We're already doing some modifications and renovations to the campus. Our student services folks, our facilities folks, they visit the campus on a regular basis. So they're becoming more comfortable with us. And we make them realize that it's not just the Lake Charles campus or the Jennings or the Oakdale, but now Lamar Salter is part of Sewella, and we make them feel like family. It's a lot of work, but in the end, it's good for Sewella. It gives us a bigger footprint in the Southwest Louisiana area. And we're proud. We're glad that so far it's been positive.
Very good. Joe, I know that you have had a critical role in ensuring that we are able to realign these campuses from a financial, a people, and a building perspective. Anything to add to what we've heard?
I just want to thank the chancellors and their staffs, and particularly my staff. When we do campus transitions, it's more so than just changing the letterhead and the sign on the front door. There's a lot of work that has to take place with external agencies, both internal and external, whether it's property, civil service, risk management, and so forth. So with that said, we're on a good path. Everything has been put into shape to move us forward come July 1. And again, I just want to thank all the staff's involvement in that process.
Questions from the board? Anyone? Thank you very much. Very much appreciated. All right, jumping to our next item is a resolution. And I thought it was appropriate, given this board's relationship with one of the leaders that has impacted this organization over the years. If you recall, a couple of months ago, we approved a resolution congratulating Dr. Joe May on his retirement. There is another leader in the community college sector that has had quite an impact on this organization. Didn't work in the organization, but has had quite an impact. And that is Dr. Glenn DuBois, the president and chancellor of the Community and Technical College System in Virginia. Glenn's final day will be June 30th. For those of you that know Glenn, he enjoys a good bike ride. Today he is in France, biking across France. I told him I would prefer a motorized vehicle to a bike, particularly in the mountains, but that is where Glenn DuBois is today. I won't take the time to read the entire resolution. It is quite lengthy, but I do think it's important that we call out one particular piece, because it was in October of 2014 in this very room when this board endorsed the plan at that time, Our Louisiana 2020, the 6-year plan, and it was developed in conjunction with our friends at SSA and Christelle Slaughter, as well as Glenn DuBois. And in this very room, it was Supervisor Toops who spoke up and said, and the whereas statement reads, whereas LCTCS board past chairman Stephen Toops credits Glenn DuBois, quote, the godfather of the American Community College, for his tireless efforts to enhance community colleges across the nation. I think that speaks volumes about the guy, as well as the way he is perceived. Supervisor Toops never will forget that day. Our good friend Vinny St. Blanc, who's now Representative St. Blanc, is the gentleman who stood beside his chair and asked each member of this board to stand up when they made the recommendation. It was that big of a deal for us. So I would ask if the board is so inclined, to approve this resolution that we could communicate to Dr. Dubois, congratulating him on an incredible 30-plus year career and all of the success and happiness in retirement. So do I hear a motion?
Absolutely.
Motion by Mr. Toops and a second by Mr. Jackson.
Have a motion and second. Any opposition? Very good. Hearing none, we will certainly communicate that to former Chancellor Dubois, who I understand now has an Airstream and will be traveling around the country. So if you see the silver Airstream with a bike attached to the back, you'll know that's Glenn Dubois. We'll make sure to have him visit us when he's here. Last item I have for you is the college update, and boy, it is a doozy this time. So there are a number of items here, unfortunately, far too many for us to include all together, but something is happening. Not only are we able to get together for commencements now, but we're also able to get together for fundraising events. And so for the first time now in 2 years, our friends at Delgado, our friends at Nunez were able to gather for the gala at Nunez, the annual roast of the town at Delgado. If you haven't been to one of those, boy, you ought to do that at least once. So I encourage you next year to consider it. But the college raised a record amount of money this year at a time when we were really uncertain about what fundraising would look like post-COVID. But in part, it was due to a significant $50,000 contribution by the Joe Georgiousis family, who continues to be a great philanthropic force for Delgado. So very excited about that one. At Nunez, in one night, you raised $65,000 in St. Bernard Parish. I would say that's probably doesn't happen every day of the week, right? Chancellor Tenney, very excited about the great work going on there at Nunez, in particular in that part of the world, Southeast Louisiana. At Delgado, out of hundreds of applications by rising change makers in music from around the world, Stephen Edwards of Delgado Community College was selected as one of the 60 members of the Global Leaders Program for 2022. Edwards is director of the honors program and professor of music at Delgado. The Global Leaders Program empowers cultural change makers to grow organizations that impact communities through an innovative 12-month executive graduate certification in social entrepreneurship. Congratulations to Stephen and to the entire team at Delgado. You heard a few minutes ago about the scholarships at Bossier Parish Community College dedicated to students at the Sabine Valley campus and the Natchitoches campus. But in addition to that, I want to share with you a development. Just this past week was announced the second FAME chapter in the state of Louisiana. FAME standing for Federation for Advanced Manufacturing Education. The very first chapter of FAME was started at the Natchitoches campus. It has been a wildly successful apprenticeship program that now both Central and BIPSI are heavily engaged in. But that second FAME chapter in Northwest Louisiana will certainly be a benefit to students there. We look forward to seeing the impact. Some of you may know the national leader of FAME is a gentleman from right here in Louisiana, originally from Natchitoches, in Tony Davis. We just got to get him to move back. That Indianapolis accent doesn't fit on him. We got to share that with him when we see him. But congratulations to you and Chancellor Bateman and the team at Bossier Parish Community College. All right. In addition, we also want to mention the folks at Nunez held commencement exercises 2 weeks ago. And as part of that, they had their first cohort of the Coastal Studies GIS program that complements the aerospace program at Nunez. Think about the impact and all of the things that are going on around the country right now as it relates to coastal studies and GIS. We typically think about our friends at the Water Institute. We think about more of the graduate research type circumstance. The reality is we have to have people to rebuild Louisiana's coast. And that's exactly what Nunez Community College is doing, contributing to one of the biggest issues our state faces in coastal erosion. So to Chancellor Tenney, appreciate the good work going on there. I do also want to mention at Sewella Technical Community College, it was Chenier back in 2019, pre-pandemic, who requested of Sewella that you develop a machine tool technology program. 2019, 2 years of pandemic. And this past week, Sewella graduated its first class of machine tool technology students. The pandemic didn't slow those guys down. That's incredible. And by the way, on the heels of 2 of the worst hurricanes in the history of this nation. The folks at Sewella Technical Community College were serious about getting this done. Congratulations to you, Chancellor, and to the entire team at Sewella for great work. We'll wrap up with 2 quick announcements from Central Louisiana Technical Community College, where Chancellor Sawtelle and his team signed 2 separate 2+2 agreement agreements between Central Louisiana Technical Community College and LSUA, as well as Central Louisiana Technical Community College and Louisiana Christian University, which I still have a hard time not calling LC, but it's okay. I'm gonna get over that at some point. So Chancellor Sawtelle, congratulations to you. I know that that agreement will serve students well over the years. So lots going on around the system, lots of great things happening at our colleges, and I just want to thank each one of the chancellors for your leadership. The commencement season has wrapped up, but I tell you this, what we always know is that there are more coming down the pike. There are more students that need to cross that stage. I can't wait until we have that opportunity to be back together again in the fall in December for commencement to see students succeed. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes the President's report. And if you'd like, we will transition into the board development segment. A number of weeks ago, we began a discussion with the board about energy as a service, as a general concept that might allow us to take the assets, the physical assets of this system. If you think about it, we are represented in 53 of the 64 parishes, physical assets in 53 of the 64 parishes. One of the things that has happened across higher education and particularly the healthcare sector is many organizations moving in a direction of energy as a service to leverage the asset that is the physical facility. And I wanted to ask a number of our partners to come forward today to really give you an update and a general common understanding as to what an energy as a service arrangement might look like. You'll recall that when we were initially approached, we agreed that we would engage partners that we already had under contract as a part of our LCTCS Facilities Corporation in Csrs, who handles all of our project management, as well as Sisson Group, who has handled our bond-related work and the finances, if you will, for the Facilities Corporation, really since the inception. These are partners that we know, that we trust, and these are partners that know us, which is really important. So what I've asked today is if Mr. Barfield from CSRS and John Mayo from Sisson would please come forward. I'd also like to ask if we can for Joe Marine to join us as well at the table. Let's see, my list is a little bit off here. Coming forward? Nope. Tim, you're letting John handle it today? Okay, got it. You've got him schooled up, I can tell. Ready. Well, with that, I would like to maybe turn this thing over to Tim Barfield to John and have John begin the presentation. I think it's important to mention, John, on the front end that the two organizations represented in front of you are not rookies when it comes to public-private partnerships, and certainly not rookies when it comes to energy as a service. These two gentlemen have about as much experience as anyone in the state of Louisiana in dealing with these kinds of issues. I think we have the right team at the table helping to advise us. John obviously has some experience in actually seeing what this looked like in the initial rollout of the first energy as a service with the state of Louisiana. So very much appreciate the expertise that they bring to bear. So John, with that, I'll turn to you.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Good morning, members. I thank you for having me here today. Just as an introduction, as Dr. Sullivan mentioned, my name is John Mayu. I'm with the Sisson Group. I know many of you, but for those of you who are maybe some newer board members, just a little bit of history. I've actually been working with the board all the way back to, I think, 1999 in the old office back in north of downtown Baton Rouge. I can remember a conference room that was maybe about as large as this table with Dr. Brown. And we've come quite a long way since then. Many hundreds of millions of dollars of financing and colleges across this state, moving forward to most recently Act 360 and Act 391 projects. In terms of our role, my firm is a securities dealer. We're a financial advisor. Under federal law, I owe you a fiduciary duty to give you independent advice that is solely in your best interest and considering no other factors. So that's a little bit about our role and what we do, and I'll let Tim give you a brief introduction of CSRS.
So thank you, John. My name is Tim Barfield, and I'm with CSRS. We, since 2007, we've been working on the primarily the Act 391 and Act 360 facility improvement programs. That has involved new facilities as well as renovation of existing facilities approximately $500 million plus of facilities improvements over that time. So it's been a pleasure to work with LCTCS, and it's a pleasure to see, as John referenced, just to see these campuses have been transformed over this time all over the state. As John mentioned, he's the financial advisor. So I would say that we chose him to go first because this has a lot of facilities type improvements for you, but this is a financial deal. This is a really interesting day and time in the market for these services. It's a lot of competition out there, and there are a lot of things technology-wise that can drive this. Our role will be your technical advisor to make sure that right now at this point, we're pulling together the information that the vendor would need to ultimately make an offer to you. But also after that offer is made, to make sure that what they're representing is actually possible. It's the engineering and the technical side of it would say this is going to be possible in terms of the savings that you're going to recognize and everything else. And last but not least, verify that it's being put into the field as they represent, which we're actually working for LSU on the Baton Rouge campus right now, as they're undergoing that process to verify that the things are happening as represented. So that would be our role. So with that, I'll turn it back over to John to kind of go through the presentation.
We're having a little bit of difficulty with the clicker, so if I could get, we did, and it either I'm pressing the wrong button, so maybe if
We have a training class for that, just in case you're wondering.
I was about to say, we can handle multi-million-dollar projects, but we can't handle a $3 clicker.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
Which button?
I was also calling into question the competency of our team right here on this one. Yeah, I was wondering who we got working for us on this? Who is that?
Glad you're taking the lead, John.
My undergraduate degree from many years ago is actually in computer science, but I can't operate a clicker. So a little bit about public-private partnerships and energy as a service. A public-private partnership is any type of project where a governmental entity such as the board is partnering with a non-governmental entity to implement some sort of project. And the board has actually done many of these. All of your financings that have been done in conjunction with facilities corporations, whether those are LCTCS Facilities Corp. That Supervisor Smith is the chair of, or the individual corporations, those are a form of public-private partnership involving a nonprofit. The energy transactions that we're talking about here today are what's known as energy as a service, and they are a specialized form of a P3 transaction. Energy as a service, the easiest way to think about it, we're all very used to, at your home or your business, you buy electricity from Energy or who the power company may be, and you pay them for delivering you electricity. Energy as a service is the same sort of concept extended to other types of utilities or energy assets other than just electricity. So for example, if one of the colleges were to take its central plant and were to partner with a private vendor to have the vendor operate the central plant, you would then purchase the output of chilled water back from that private vendor. And so the transaction is designed to be similar to a utility type of service agreement. But it involves usually a vendor coming in, making some capital investments on the front end to upgrade your existing assets. And then in portions of the transaction of the vendor actually operating those assets moving forward. So these energy as a service transactions, as we'll see on the next couple of slides, are very similar to what's been done nationally as well as some other places in Louisiana. On a national scope, I have a list here of some of the universities that have done these in recent years. You may notice a pattern here that there's some significant ramp up in recent years. Energy as a service is really taking off across the country. It has hit the university world as a way of universities, as you know, have limited capital resources. Deferred maintenance is an issue. Sustainability and energy efficiency is becoming more of an issue. And particularly as it relates to attracting students, in many cases, is something that students pay more attention to. So the colleges and universities nationwide are focusing on this more. The Ohio State transaction was the landmark transaction. It was about $1 billion that they did. And these are some of the major universities. There are also some smaller universities that have done this as well. And there are others beyond those that I've listed that are in various stages in the works. More closer to home here in Louisiana. Some other similar projects. The state did the first transaction. Well, actually, the very first transaction was LSU Medical Center back in 2000. Did a transaction in New Orleans for their central plant. More recently, the inaugural transaction was for the state for the Shaw Center here in downtown Baton Rouge. And now we have a number of transactions that are in the works. Some of them in follow-up to Shaw, some independently. LSU was a landmark transaction last year. Tim's firm is involved as the technical advisor in that deal. I should have mentioned the Shaw deal I was involved with. We spent about 4 or 5 years putting that together with the state. Over at the UL system, presently working with UNO, UL Lafayette are pretty far along in the works, and there are proposals before some of those other universities as well. Southern University I'm working with, they are considering final approval in a couple of weeks. And I've also listed some other private entities in the state that have undertaken transactions as well. So if the board does choose to move forward with this, you're not the guinea pig, you're not the first. They are innovative transactions, but it is a path that has been followed. So what actually do these transactions involve? This slide on scopes, benefits, and challenges, it's really independent to every school. You have to go in and look at what the needs of each individual campus are. But some of the types of projects that these typically involve are included. Central plants for chillers and boilers are usually one of the largest components. Basic energy efficiency items such as upgrading in campus buildings, air handlers, LED lighting, building control systems. These are your energy efficiency types of projects that are undertaken. In some cases, looking at solar energy. And we also have some exterior lighting. Southern, one of their primary focuses, student safety and security is a big issue, a big topic of conversation right now. They felt they had some deficiencies in that area, and it's one of the major things that they're looking to address. Potential benefits, the capital investment is very significant here. Modernization of assets, dealing with deferred maintenance type issues, as well as combining that. The question always comes up, how are we going to pay for this? The method of payment really comes in through the energy savings. And if these private entities are able to bring any efficiencies to the operation of the portions that they privatize. We also look at risk transfer. So the renewal of assets and the cost of operating assets over time is something that when you own and operate it, you're at risk for that. We've all grown accustomed over many years to a 2% inflation rate. And over the last few months and year here, we've learned that inflation is not always going to be 2%. So if you're able to transfer some of that lock in an operating cost and a maintenance cost over a long period of time, then you've transferred some of that risk to another party. These transactions can also involve the delivery of upfront discretionary cash. That cash can be used for anything the board wants to, anything from, we have some institutions that may look at endowed scholarships. You can invest that in other capital projects. It's really up to the board's discretion and on an individual campus basis. So those are some of the potential scopes and benefits. What are the primary challenges? I think the largest challenge is that these transactions are very, very complex. They're the single most, I've been in the finance business for over 25 years. These are the most complicated transactions I've ever worked on by far. They take a lot of peeling back the layers of the onion, a lot of due diligence. to make sure that you're entering into a transaction, having done that due diligence and with completely open eyes as to what you're getting into. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tim to talk through some of those due diligence issues.
Thank you, John. And I'm going to go on to the next slide, but I'm going to follow up on the challenges. What makes this particular opportunity very challenging? There's a couple things. Number one is, if you looked at the list of the major universities that are undertaking this, typically speaking, there's a concept where you're on a large campus and you have a lot of equipment and other things. You can do things more efficiently than you can on a very decentralized system like LCTCS is. We have 12 campuses. We have, I believe, over 60, 12 colleges, over 60 campuses, hundreds of buildings. So one of the things you often see would be utilization of district chilling and other type things that bring efficiencies. Well, there'll be some of that maybe on a campus basis, but that's going to be harder to do across 12 campuses than it is across like an LSU Baton Rouge campus, which is a huge campus with a lot more opportunities for savings. The other aspect of it too is, as many of these firms will price into their models some excess capacity. I know that's one of the issues that came up at one of the other UL facilities in terms of, hey, there's excess capacity. We can sell that to third parties, and that's ends up inuring to be a financial benefit to the school, right? Well, that makes it harder to do depending on what you have. So the geography and the spread, the decentralized locations will make it more challenging, and that's been recognized through the process so far. So that'll be one of it. The second thing is actually a good thing. Y'all have a lot of new facilities. Roughly 30% of the facilities really came online since 2007. So, or they've been redone. So typically speaking, generally across the board, newer facilities are going to have more efficient lighting and HVAC and other facilities. So those are all a couple of the challenges that we've already started to see. But the process really is, as he said, it's a complex transaction. It starts with information gathering. So the vendor needs an incredible amount of detailed technical information about every campus, every building, the condition of the building, the make and model of the HVAC equipment, the lighting, everything else. It's an incredibly intense information gathering system. And that's the phase we're in now. And we're actually in sort of information gathering point 2 until they've come back and asked for more detailed information. And that can be very, very onerous on the system and the colleges out there, as I'm sure Joe can attest to. And it's not always in the most readily available information, particularly the older buildings are, the more difficult it is to pull together. So we're in the stage now where we've pulled a lot of the information together, and now there's second and third request about digging into that and getting there. Once you do that, the vendor will take that, and it takes them a lot of time to put that together. And they're looking at available technologies, capital cost, the longevity of the equipment they'll be choosing, all those things to see where they can achieve savings. And literally, we want to make sure the utility of the buildings, the facilities will at least be maintained and even enhanced, right? So that is a big part of what they're putting together, to put together a technical part of the offer, but that drives the financial part of the offer. And then there's a technical review that they'll give an offer. As a technical consultant, we'll come in and make sure that this is going to do what they say it does. And then there's a financial review. They'll present a financial model. And I know Dr. Sullivan has told our team is he wants to make sure that you, the board, that he is the system president, understands, exactly where the money is going to be made, how this is going to happen, how the money is going to flow, where the risks are, who's going to take the risk. So that's a part of the complexity. And last but not least, there's a legal review here. Now you're a state organization. There's always multiple levels of legal review. In this case, there's some complexities, and I'll turn it over to John to talk about the tax exempt financing that you've done through bonds that add a new complexity that we don't totally have our arms around yet and won't until we get some more information.
Sure. Just very, very briefly on that point. This is actually a good added complexity. You've been able to issue hundreds of millions of dollars of tax exempt bonds that the state has paid the debt service for you on. Under federal tax law, there are certain rules about when you own a facility that was financed with tax exempt debt. There are limitations on being able to allow a private for-profit entity to come in and utilize parts of that building. So essentially what this entails is going back and looking at facilities that a vendor might be interested in, tracing back to whether that was paid for with tax exempt debt, and having the tax lawyers with bond counsel, Jones Walker's your bond counsel, and they go back and look at all the tax exempt bond rules. So that is one added complexity here, but we'll certainly be working with them along with your board counsel to work through all the legal documents and negotiation.
We'll go on to really the last slide here and just gives you a little bit of a sense of the time frame. So the information gathering has started. There's additional levels of requests and detail added. So we're estimating 2 to 3 months there. Hopefully we can do that in a shorter time period. Then there's the vendor offer that comes in, and that'll take them a while. Once they get they've got a lot of the information, so it's not like they got to start from zero, but it'll take them 1 to 2 months to put that together. There'll be additional due diligence after we get the offer. There will have to go in and verify what they say they're going to do works from a technical standpoint and from a financial standpoint. There's some negotiation there. This will be the type, I think we'll have more than a few iterations of negotiations on the technical side, as well as on the financial and the deal structuring side. All sorts of reviews and approvals. And those of us who have worked in the system and work with the system, this is a big list here. You have the normal system and LCTCS Facilities Corp approvals, Board of Regents, the division, the Joint Legislative Committee on Budget. Estimated 3 months, but any one of those can throw you a wrench in the process.
It appears simple enough, Tim. I'm not sure what the complication is, just looking at this slide by itself.
This is full employment for, unfortunately, for lawyers and firms like us. But the transaction closing happens, and then the implementation. And the implementation can take years. So LSU is estimated to be 18 to 24 months to just get everything installed. We live in a world with COVID where we're seeing supply chain challenges all over the place. You're seeing, the great resignation, resource issues across the board. It's the toughest time I've ever been in for capital projects to look and look at cost and schedule and feel any level of confidence. I don't think this is going to be any different. And you're going to be on multiple campuses. The logistical aspect of this will make this more challenging, but it'll also probably drive some of the economics the wrong way for the system as compared to, some of the more condensed systems. So that kind of concludes our presentation. And we're ready for any questions or comments from anyone.
If I may, before we get to questions, there are 2 points, and I should have included this in the opening comments. First of all, you noted in the list that the list was primarily universities. This is the first foray for energy as a service for 2-year colleges as a system. So we are not only taking this seriously because of our fiduciary responsibility to the state of Louisiana and to our students, but also because of the responsibility we have to the rest of the sector, who is now beginning to think about what this could mean for 2-year colleges. Second point that I'll mention to you is, and I think this one gets lost all too often in the discussion. Everything we're talking about reduces the system's carbon footprint. Supervisor Hardy, you can explain to this board in much more detail what that really means. But the truth of the matter is we have to be more environmentally conscious. And that's what this effort allows us to do, is to significantly reduce that carbon footprint, showing that we are contributing to the solution within the state. So with that, glad to answer any questions that the board may have around energy as a service. I specifically would like to hold any questions as it relates to the proposal or any partner, because we're talking about energy as a service broadly at this point in the transaction. So with that, I'll turn for questions. Supervisor Smith.
Very quickly, and I think it bears worth emphasizing. I'll kind of ask this as a question, but I'll state, I mean, you mentioned the benefits to the system. We talked about the complexity of the arrangement and the due diligence, which is all very valid and true. But at the end of the day, the benefit to the system, number one, is to get more energy efficient facilities, more modern facilities, particularly with the, the capital plant, the central plant that supports many of our facilities, which we struggle to keep up with. So that's a true benefit. And of course, that, it should be some cost saving. It should be some cost savings over time to operate our facilities. I mean, that's the goal, is to make our facilities operate more efficiently, more cost effectively, reduce the carbon footprint. And also there are potentially some other financial benefits to the system, which we really didn't talk about, but there's some other potential long-term finance. So even as complex as it is, the goal is to, in my mind, those 3 or 4 bullet points I just recited, and perhaps some other ones that you might be able to add on. Dr. Sullivan.
I think you nailed them, and I'd rather not get into the details of the multiple financial benefits, because this is not one of those transactions that you want to be wowed by the dollar signs. This is a transaction that you want to focus on, as these 2 gentlemen did, the risk, because there is opportunity there. There's a lot of upside to this deal, but there are also risks that we need to make sure to minimize along the way, and having partners that know the space will help us to be able to minimize that risk. Other questions or comments?
Let me ask a question, please. I'm a good bit fuzzy on the discussions. Is this a form of a long-term maintenance agreement for energy savings? Is that what it amounts to?
Oh, it'll come. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. So let me give an example, might be the best way to answer that question. Let's take a central plant. So you have a college that has an existing central plant. It has chillers in it. All right. Those chillers provide chilled water that goes through pipes underground to all the campus buildings. And those buildings then use the chilled water to do air conditioning within the buildings. So in a transaction like this, you might have a vendor who comes in, they lease the central plant from the system.
The vendor is a subcontractor.
The vendor would lease the facility. They would then operate the facility. They would maintain the facility.
HVAC.
Yes, sir. They would maintain it within the central plant only. They wouldn't run the air conditioning within the individual buildings.
It cover the air handlers and the whole ball of wax.
Depending on the agreement, it could involve the air handlers or not. But rather than the system operating that plant, the vendor would come in, make investments. They operate and maintain the plant on their dime, and you're paying for the output of the plant. You're buying the chilled water. I mentioned like a utility up front.
Right.
So instead of you buying a kilowatt of electricity, you're now buying a unit of chilled water.
So they're going to do the testing of the water and everything.
They're responsible. At the end, there would be a standard, and it would say, you have to deliver us chilled water to these locations on campus in these amounts on these hours at this temperature. That's the gist of what they deliver. Another example that would not involve an operation, let's say you had a vendor who came in and upgraded the lighting and building control systems. So they might come in and take older, could be fluorescent, could be incandescent lighting. They change it out with new fixtures with LEDs. There's an inherent energy savings due to those LEDs. They would upgrade in facilities that don't have this already, a more modern building control system. So that control system does things like automatically turn off the lights at the end of the day, automatically raises the temperature at the end of the day. And it also gives a more detailed monitoring of the energy usage within each building. Dr. Sullivan, you mentioned about the carbon footprint. One of the things that some of these vendors can do, you can actually have it real time, but they certainly can provide periodic reports. They can actually do a real time dashboard that you can put on your website. A lot of schools have this now, and I can provide you some examples where it shows not only the cost savings, but the energy and carbon savings over time, either as a system or at individual campuses. It's an interesting tool. Did I answer your question?
What? My next question. If I'm a local chancellor at one of our campuses and I'm unhappy with the service that I'm receiving from the vendor that your organization is selected, what recourse am I going to have?
Let me say first off, I don't select the vendor and Tim doesn't select the vendor. We can evaluate them and give you advice, but
Makes that selection.
The board makes that decision.
Okay.
You get to choose who that would be.
Next question, what's the length of those contracts that's going to be suggested? Is there a length or not?
They're typically anywhere from 20 to 40 years. They are long-term agreements. Now you have certain rights to get out. But I can tell you, once you get in, you're pretty much going to
Well, if I'm unhappy as a chancellor, I'm going to be stuck with it.
well,
I'm being the devil's advocate.
yes, sir.
I understand that.
Absolutely. And that's part of what it's to look at worst case scenario and look at risk. So
Mention each contract will have a performance,
mhm.
some performance metrics they have to meet. And if they don't meet those, they'll have an opportunity to cure their default. But if they don't cure it within a reasonable amount of time, then you can void the
Well, y'all
contract.
going to handle the complaints.
So that'll be something we'll deal with the system, but
Absolutely. So that, if you think about a given set of circumstances, I'll use the Bogalusa campus. You know that one quite well.
It probably needs more maintenance than any of them. I'm glad you selected that.
Chancellor Wainwright's agreeing with you. So in that instance, you have an equipment upgrade. And the campus dean or the chancellor decides, hey, this isn't working the way I need it to. We have a technical advisor in CSRS who is helping to advise us through that process to make sure that the vendor has hit the quality standards, to make sure that we are getting the level of service that we're looking for. Because the goal here is to free up resources, provide a better service, not a lesser service, but to do it in a way where the people who have the expertise are the ones who are out there dealing with the day-to-day operations, rather than the burden that our chancellors have to face even to this day in dealing with some of the, Earl Metter is a great example. Chancellor Metter, I mean, you've spent some time on top of that building in Shreveport and digging below it, right? When you have a chancellor out digging pipes, that's not a good thing. Just make sure we all know that. And to have an organization like CSRS that could come in
Or
and
getting
bring
on the
resources
roof during a hurricane.
or during a hurricane, correct. Yes. sir.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I realize I put you on the spot.
No
Good
problem.
job. Good
That's
job.
it.
Thank you.
I had a question is somewhat related to Mickey's. And I don't profess to know the details, have a full grasp of what we're proposing, but it seems to me it's an all or nothing. That was what struck me. It's an all or nothing deal. It's a system deal. And again, it's somewhat related to Mickey. Is it a one size fits all deal? I mean, some of our facilities may be, I don't know, in excellent shape. They may not be bought into this. So why is it an all or nothing deal? Why, for example, couldn't one college say, hey, I think this is a great thing for us, but another one of our colleges, I mean, I noticed you had UL system, you had UL Lafayette, I'm from Lafayette, but not the system. You had LSU, but not the system. With us, it seemed like it's the system. Is it a size deal? Why is that?
I think Dr. Sullivan hit on some of this at the beginning. To take UL as an example, their system is very decentralized. I mean, each college is large enough. They largely determine their own fate. And a lot of the projects that I had on the list, these are single site, highly concentrated, larger dollars. This system, as Tim mentioned, is unique in the number of campuses that you have. Certainly, say if a Delgado or a BRCC at their main campus alone had tried to do an individual project, could you get that done under something like this? Yeah, you could probably get that done. It may or may not be under the best terms due to the size of what you're looking at, but you're not going to be able to go out and do an individual project in a Bogalusa or a Faraday or somewhere like that, based on the size of those individual campuses. So the board would have to make an ultimate decision as to what projects you want to include. The vendor will come back with a package that says we will do all of these different campuses, but the board would get to decide. As to your first question, I'll just say briefly, the technical solution is by its very nature customized to each campus. So just because you're doing lighting at these 10 campuses does not mean that you have to do lighting at these other campuses. Just because you're doing the central plant at other campuses does not mean that you're necessarily doing it. The technical is customized, but you would have to decide on what that system-wide basket is or whether some are left out.
Is a great question. And this is one of the reasons why I thought it was important for the board to understand the context of energy as a service arrangements, so that you could ask those kinds of questions of where does it make sense? You know, look, we may get to the end of this thing and realize that it doesn't make sense as a system, or we could get to a point where it does make sense financially. I don't have any preconceived notions one way or the other. If by chance we find out that it's not a doable deal as a system, it could be that we have other colleges who want to take a look, particularly the larger ones, because I think the more you aggregate the demand, the more the deal is viable. And so what we're trying to do is to look at all of the colleges. I think about a Northwest as an example. There's no way Northwest could do the due diligence of a deal like this without a system effort. It wouldn't happen. We probably have 3 colleges in the room that could afford to do that due diligence on their own. And so this is a chance for us to do the due diligence and to answer the question, is this a viable deal as a system deal?
Additional question. Will the evaluation, how far outside of sort of the college landscape will it look? I know selling third-party services can be another way to build scale, and can envision in some of our campuses.
It's hard to answer that at this time until we get more detail from the vendor themselves. I think, one of the challenges, to go back to relate it to Supervisor Jackson's question, you attract the bigger players with more volume, with more opportunities for third-party type services because you have the economies of scale and you have all that. The dispersion of our campuses and colleges make this very unique. And so it's really going to be hard to say at this time. And then that's going to be part of the negotiations. What if something develops after the fact, that there's excess capacity? Is there a benefit for the system and things like that? I mean, there's a lot of work to be done on that. I think the first step is, because this is such a different challenge from what you traditionally see with very centralized large campuses, what is the initial offer going to look like? What's the benefit? And then is there some lagniappe beyond that, honestly?
Questions or comments? Members, I want to be really clear. This is a discussion that will be iterative in nature. We are not coming to you and asking for a decision, obviously, today. And we'll see how the work goes over the summer. We'll see where we stand in August. We'll see what the detail looks like, and we'll be able to make a decision about when is an appropriate time for this board to decide. But the commitment that we make here today is we're going to make sure that we answer the questions that you feel like are appropriate before you can make a decision on behalf of the system. Fair enough? All right, very good. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Joe, I apologize. Anything to add? The truth of the matter is Joe is the guy that's been behind the scenes, as John mentioned earlier, gathering a lot of this data. And Joe, I can't tell you how much we appreciate all the work, not only prepping for a board meeting, but also providing the data this.
I'd like to say that when John and I started this organization 20 years ago, we were hippies. So you can see the effect of working
hair,
or
taking its toll.
Good day.
To that end, I want to thank the LCTCS staff, Joe, and your staff and the colleges, because we put a lot of burden on them with requests, and Anthony Brown and his team too. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys. I failed to mention a few minutes ago, I want to, Mr. Chairman, if I may, recognize we have with us today and we'll have with us throughout the board meetings for this coming year, 2 interpreters that are working with Matthew to make sure that we are communicating the message that is going on among this group. And I just think it's important that we call them out. Ms. Valerie Val Fletcher, who is a 20+ year interpreter, and just so much fun to learn about the story and the background of why she does the work that she does. And then in addition, we also have Malachi Mooney, who's with us from both of whom are from right here in Baton Rouge, do this work on behalf of our students. As a board, you know that you approve social services contracts that are the provision for this service at every one of our colleges. And so today you get an opportunity to see firsthand the work that these individuals do. How about a round of applause for our interpreters? With that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes the President's report and the board development session, and I'll turn back to you.
Dr. Sullivan, at this point, I'd like to present the committee of the whole items for consideration by the board. Will that be you, Monty?
Staff recommends that the board ratify actions of the committee of the whole represented by items I-1A through I-1K4.
The May 11th, 2022 Board of Supervisors Executive Committee meeting. You heard the recommendation.
A motion? Mr. Murphy, and a second by Mr. Roman Hardy.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Is there any opposition? Hearing none, that motion carries. Supervisor Roman Hardy, would you present the academics action items for consideration, please, sir?
Yes, happy to. You might coach me about to read them all, but present the following 6 academic action items for consideration by the board. Sarah, do I need to read them all out?
Sir, you would read item number 2 for review and advisement, and then somebody from staff will come up to the presenter.
This item under academics is item number 2 for board review and advisement, new LCTCS policy number 2.020, the Title IX rights of pregnant and parenting students, Board of Regents policy updates.
Good. I would ask if we can for Dr. Amber Blair to come forward. While she is coming forward, I want you to note the bright shade of red that her face will turn in a moment, because I'm going to recognize yesterday, Dr. Blair was recognized as a Title IX trailblazer right here in the state of Louisiana for all of her work. I can't even begin to put into words the amount of work that has gone into getting this organization up to a point with Title IX that we can be proud of, and that we can say directly to our students, to our faculty and our staff, our campuses are a place where you are welcome, where you are safe, and where you can learn. And Dr. Blair, thank you for all of the great work that you've done in that regard. This item is just one of those items. So I'll give you a minute to kind of talk through the details of item number 2.
Thank you so much. And from one introvert to another, Chair Price, I feel you today. Thank you for the recognition. I appreciate it. It's a privilege to do what I do. Welcome to our student board members who are here for the first time. Item 2 on this agenda is really a trend, what's trending across the country in terms of higher education institution policy. The Title IX rights of pregnant parenting students policy was really a ground up policy developed from our colleges who wanted a more systematic approach to this. Title IX does cover pregnant and parenting students. And so some of our colleges had this policy and some did not. So they wanted a more uniform approach to this, and that's what this represents. Staff recommends that the board accept for review and advisement new policy 2.020, the Title IX rights of pregnant and parenting students.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the board? Again, this is for review and advisement. We'll have an opportunity to see this one again at our next meeting. Any questions? Dr. Blair, thank you.
Yeah, I think I have the next item too.
Yes. Supervisor Hardy, if you'd like to read in number 3.
It's the day for introverts. So. My wife bought me a t-shirt.
You're a good company.
Introverts unite separately. Yes.
Absolutely.
So the next item, number 3, revisions to LCTCS policy number 2.005, student organizations.
Thank you. You saw this policy in our May executive meeting. The revision is in response to the midterm vacancy and to maintain less disruption and to maintain the processes, procedures, and initiatives in the last part of a term. So staff recommends that the board approve revisions of LCTCS policy 2.005, student organizations.
So item number 4 is.
I'm sorry,
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Right.
Mr. Hardy, there, we need a motion and a second for approval. It's a motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Tim Hardy.
Thank you.
Any objection? That motion carries.
You
The
Dr. Blair.
extrovert will always support you.
I think that's going to be the next item, report on strategic sustainability and growth initiative 1A, phase 2 initiative to lessen financial burden for students.
As Dr. Palermo comes to the table, for those of you that are relatively new to the board, this is probably an item that you look at and go, what? Sustainability and what? Well, about, I believe it was 5 years ago, looks like March of 17, this board adopted a series of recommendations to attempt to become more sustainable across time, recognizing that the rise and fall in revenue from both state of Louisiana as well as from enrollment will continue to have an impact on our colleges. And so one of the areas that you suggested that we face is how do we reduce the overall cost? So there's tuition and fees, but then there are a whole series of things that impact a student's ability to attend, not the least of which is textbooks. And so this area is one that we've continued to bring back to you to give you updates on, to make sure that you know the impact that your decision has made across time, and to let you know, we didn't just go through phase 1 of this. We've continued to grab a hold of this because we know this is a major issue for our students. So with that, I'll turn to Dr. Palermo.
Morning, Chair Price, Dr. Sullivan, and members of the board. It is exciting to come before you to share the success that we had with phase 1. Dr. Sullivan touched on a little bit of the success, but I think that you would probably prefer to hear numbers. So in phase 1, about $14 million were saved for students for textbooks and access. So now system has worked with colleges, and phase 2 is where we're going next. So the next phase is where, I'm going to read it, put my glasses on, is to save money and to improve student success by ensuring that students have access on day 1. So that's kind of the goal and where we're headed, but we wanted to make sure that we come before the board, one, to share with you the success that we've had since March of 2017 moving forward, and that we plan to continue to come back before the board as we have more success. So it's really just for information. I turn it back over to you, Dr. Sullivan.
Recall that there were a number of times over the last 5 or 6 years, you have heard about open education resources. Open education resources essentially allow, instead of a faculty member to identify a textbook and say, this textbook's going to cost $75 down at the bookstore, instead to develop materials that are available to students free of charge. Open education resources. That's where the $14 million savings came from. We did that OER effort in the highest enrollment classes that we have so that we can maximize the impact. Now with phase 2, we don't want to be in a position of saying to faculty members, you must choose this textbook or materials. That's one of the decisions that faculty get to make. And so our phase 2 effort is really about identifying textbook materials that can be available to student on day 1. So instead of saying to the student, go down to the bookstore and buy a book, it will be built in as a course fee at a significantly reduced rate. So instead of the student spending $50 on a textbook, they may pay $25 for course material access. Again, cutting in half the price point. Longer term, the impact for our students is driving down the cost. So constantly trying to be cost aware and ensure that we're not impacting negatively our students. So thank you to Dr. Palermo for her work, to Missy LaCour, who has been instrumental in this effort as well. We'll continue to keep you abreast of the changes. Very good. With that, we'll turn to the next item.
Next item number 5 is accreditation update. Sorry.
And I'll ask if Chancellor Metter and Chancellor Sawtell, as well as Dr. Bill Tulak, will join us at the table today. Dr. Sawtell's about beating a path down here by the end of the day today, right? You know your way to the table, right? That's good. Very good. With that, maybe Dr. Palermo, I'll ask you to start.
So, this is our update to the Board of Supervisors on where we are on SAC COC accreditation for both Central Louisiana Technical Community College and Northwest Louisiana Technical Community College. So Bill Tulak and I have been working with the colleges, but before I go into that, I'll turn it over to you, I think Chancellor Sawtelle, to provide an update where we are.
Thank you very much, Dr. Palermo. Members of the board, good morning again. In our update, want to share a few items of just where we are in the progress of things. You may recall that part of our accreditation journey is that we still have a face-to-face on-site visit with the Council on Occupational Education. We've had multiple conversations with them. They're going to be coming to Central Louisiana and taking a look at our 5 campuses in the first full week of August 8th and 9th. And that's a Monday and a Tuesday. So we're going to host 2 or 3 members of the COE visiting team on that time. At present, we are continuing our SACS application. I cannot thank again enough Dr. Palermo and Mr. Tulak and folks from around our system who have really put their hand to the plow in terms of just helping us in terms of guidance, things of that nature. So the new things that we're working on are specifically with the Ward H National Vols campus in Cottonport remaining with the college. We are now bringing an additional site to the application, and that is the Raymond Laborde Correctional Center. So we've had multiple conversations with them. Their warden for education is a former CLTCC employee, Mr. Jude Petrie, now Warden Petrie. And so we're identifying mutual programs that we will offer, and also SLCC will offer as they have built relationship with them as well. So that part of the application, been in touch with SACS, that will be part of the application that we're going to submit for November 1st, October 31st, and that will be considered at the December commission meeting or the December SACS meeting. In addition to that, the other item that we have, and as we move forward and update the numbers, update some of the things that are there, is our 3rd full scope audit. So that is going on right now. It's in progress, and that is the final piece of what our application will be, and that's set to be brought to closure in mid to late October, and then that will be the final part that we put in our application and deliver to SACS for that December consideration. Thank you, Dr. Palermo.
What's the matter?
Always a hard act to follow. President Sullivan, Chairman Price, board, we want to thank you for your continuing support. We continue the journey. As you've learned from the other colleges, it's a long and complex journey that we walk down. We're still on track, as I promised in the April board meeting, that we'll be wrapping this thing up in the July timeframe and putting it in the mail or sending the send button somewhere the first few days of August. So when we see you in August, we're going to be dancing a little dance to celebrate that submission. But as Chancellor Sawtelle has explained to you, in the months after that, there will be revisions, there will be pieces and things that's done. In many ways, I thank Chancellor Sawtelle for some of his problems that he's had to go through, because each and every time they do a revision, we go back and do a revision because of the revision. So we're learning at those that are a few steps ahead of us. The way the SACS timeline works, we're somewhat regulated by the board meetings, which are December, June timeframes. And we came to the conclusion that there's no way possible we can get on the December timeframe with SACS. So we feel very comfortable that the June timeframe will be met. So in simple terms, we're about 6 months behind the CLTCC journey. Lots of work ahead, and each and every time that the central folks take a step, we learn something from it, from their steps. So it's in many ways, they're paving the way for us. So we're getting there is what I can say in summary.
Bit of context, I think, particularly for our newer board members, as 12 institutions, and if you really go back to the formulation of the system in 1999, we had a mixture of institutions that were Council on Occupational Education accredited and some that were SACS COC accredited. What has happened across time, the legislature has acted in multiple steps across time in urging colleges to go out and get that SACS COC accreditation. The final 2 institutions of those 12 are Central and Northwest. Prior to this, we have had institutions, most recently North Shore Technical Community College, who transitioned from COE to SACS. That journey was a long journey, having nothing to do with leadership, having everything to do with the financial position of the state of Louisiana. In addition to that, we had other institutions who stood up in South Louisiana Community College, River Parishes Community College, Baton Rouge Community College, and Louisiana Delta, all of who have been through this process. I would dare say that this system has more expertise in how to stand up and accredit institutions than probably any other two-year college system in the country because of the experience that we've been through. It has not been an easy one, but we are in that place right now. The final two, so a year from now, when we sit at this table, both applications will have been submitted and we'll be in a place where likely Northwest will be pending an authorization of a candidacy visit. So a lot of work has gone into this. I want to thank specifically in front of this board, Bill Tulak, who has just done an incredible job of coming in and being that accreditation assistant, the person who's really taken these colleges to where they need to be in order to get across that hurdle. So Bill, thank you for all the great work. Any questions of the board? All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Item number 6 is implementation plan for regional workforce plans to be funded by Workforce Training, Rapid Response, Reboot, Broadband, and Healthcare as part of the 2022 regular session of the Louisiana Legislature.
I will ask in addition to Dr. Palermo, Dr. Cable, we have with us Susie Showen, Susie is a relatively new member to the team, but not a stranger whatsoever. Came to us from LED Fast Start and has just been an incredible addition. And then, of course, Ashley Mullen, who's handling our rural initiatives, our broadband initiatives, as well as assisting in the government relations area. If you look back at this past budget cycle and legislative session, we walked away from this session with $65 million new dollars. The vast majority of that is one-time money focused on specific workforce initiatives. 10 million in Foster Promise, 10 million in broadband workforce initiatives, 10 million in what we have dubbed the Reboot Your Career 2.0 initiative. And then in addition to that, 25 million in healthcare funding, specifically aimed at providing a workforce. So let's think about what just those 4 pots looks like within the state of Louisiana and how we drive completions. What I have asked each one of the 4 of these individuals to do, Dr. Palermo in the healthcare area, Dr. Cable in the Foster Promise area, Susie Showen in the Reboot Your Career area, and Dr. Mullen in the broadband space, is to pull together not only the guidelines around each one of these funds, but also to make sure that there is not additional burden placed upon students to qualify. Let's make this process seamless to the student, seamless to the employer. Let us deal with the back end details of this thing because all of the funds are coming from different sources. It is very complicated as to how we qualify students for each one of these funds. So I've asked a group of them to talk with you briefly about each one of the programs, give you a little bit of background as to what we expect. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Cable.
All right. So good morning, Chair Price, Dr. Sullivan, and members of the board. As Dr. Sullivan has mentioned, the 2022 legislative session proved to be very fruitful for LCTCS to continue preparing citizens for the workforce success. Our colleges will be tasked with funding programs to generate completers utilizing support from 4 funding sources, including Workforce Rapid Response, Healthcare, Reboot, and Broadband, in addition to the MJ Foster Promise program, totaling over $70 million. The funds will support over 10,000 additional academic credentials, academic awards, credentials of value, and on-ramp credentials in those 5 industry sectors, including healthcare, transportation and logistics, information technology, manufacturing, and construction. And if you recall, last year, we utilized a very similar fund that we called Reboot, where we produced over 6,500 credentials. So we're really excited about working with our colleges to begin developing plans around each of these funds. Before we get to the recommendation, we would like to provide a brief overview of each of the funds. And so I'll turn it over to Dr. Wendy Palermo to discuss rapid response and healthcare.
Okay, so I am just over the moon thrilled with the investment that the legislature has taken to LCTCS And with the $25 million, the ability to expand training and education to meet the need of healthcare industry workforce is a phenomenal task. The $25 million as written will be over a 3-year time frame. So work has already begun behind the scenes with our industry partners. As you can imagine, their excitement to work with LCTCS and how we can expand. There have been meetings already, as you can imagine. So there is, with a focus in healthcare, we're looking at nursing, of course, both LPN, RN, CNA, medical assistant, surgical technology, sterile processing, and rad tech. There will be a process which the colleges would submit if approved by this board, once approved by this board, that they can go after the dollars and be rewarded for the number of credentials that are awarded to the students and graduates and completers. So as we look forward to coming back to you in the very near future with updates on the credentials that were issued as a result of these dollars. I think now to Miss Susie Showett.
Oh, it's already on. Thank you very much. So Monty briefly introduced me, but let me say a quick word. I spent the last 10 years with Louisiana Economic Development with LED Fast Start, focused on workforce development through the economic development lens. And I am maintaining that perspective over here at LCTCS because, of course, what LCTCS does is all about economic opportunity for our students and for our communities. And it is within that context that I'm talking about the reboot funds. So within the LCTCS system, we have $10 million to spend there and 1 year to spend it in. We're looking at about 6,000 credentials there within 5 key areas. And that's IT, manufacturing, construction, transportation and warehousing, and healthcare. During the previous year of the reboot funding, there was an emphasis on what we call on-ramp credentials, as well as the credentials that lead directly into high-wage, high-demand jobs. We are looking during this coming year to de-emphasize some of those on-ramp credentials and make sure that we're really focused on the credentials that are the most meaningful in the economy for our employers and for the students. We will be, as Amy and the rest of us will talk about in some detail, looking at some comprehensive implementation plans at the college level. But I just want to put a word out there that I've been talking with my fellow economic developers over the last couple of weeks to secure their commitment to making sure that they're working with the colleges to help make sure that we're prioritizing these credentials correctly and that they're assisting with marketing and building awareness in the community for the pathways that we're building here. And I'm going to turn it over.
Yes, the broadband funds are coming from the federal and state government. And so you probably have heard of gumbo grants or a Louisiana funded grant that will be dispersed hopefully this summer. And so Governor John Bel Edwards and the Louisiana legislature prioritize the hiring of local Louisiana residents to expand broadband infrastructure across the state. Because of this, they appropriated $10 million to LCTCS this session for broadband-related workforce training. So this program is going to function similar to Reboot, and we have 12 months to spend these funds, and they will, colleges will receive a reimbursement for students that earn a credential in an in-demand credential related to broadband infrastructure implementation and then maintenance once broadband is installed. We're aiming for 5,000 credentials with this money, and the industries being targeted are similar to Reboot: construction, manufacturing, transportation, logistics, information technology, with a focus on fiber optic technicians. So with Susie's help and the rest of the women up here, we are working with the economic development organizations and industry partners to make sure that our final list of approved credentials is supported by the industry. Thank you.
And to bring it on home, just as a reminder, MJ Foster Promise, last dollar in scholarships. And there's going to be a lot of overlap with the industry credentials and academic programs for all of these different funds. A little bit of an update on promised numbers. We have over 2,700 applications, of which 1,400 of those are deemed eligible. And so now our roll work is going to come into enrolling those students in those programs and getting them to the completion line. And we're continuously working with the Louisiana Office of Student Financial Aid Administrators to make sure that we have the best and most efficient process to help those students get eligible and enrolled in our colleges. So to that point,
Amy, if I may,
Oh,
just
sure.
just one quick item around
Yeah.
foster promise and our friend Dr.
Vosford.
She has a married name now, and I struggle a bit. I had an opportunity to meet her better half the other day, and very impressive. But one of the things that we have done as part of our foster promise rollout is to engage with the Board of Regents and the folks at LASFA to ensure that students are able to take the biggest benefit. One of the things that was included in the legislation is a requirement that it be the last dollar. We ran a resolution this time. I want to thank Senator Fields, who carried that resolution, SCR 49, that clarified that we are not requiring students to go out and borrow the maximum amount of money before they get a promise, which is kind of ridiculous, but it's okay. We got the legislative intent. The second issue we're working our way through is one that would set aside the full lifetime value of that award, $6,400 for every student that qualifies. We are not a state that has enough money to set aside and let it sit in an account and gather dust while people out on the streets need education. And so we continue to push on that issue. I appreciate the support from the commissioner, appreciate the support from LASFA. This is not a legalistic discussion. This is not about the lawyers coming up with hurdles. Sorry, Jim. This is much more about how do we make this easy for students? How do we make sure that they are trained? So thank you to our friends at the Board of Regents for continuing to be troopers as it relates to just driving this dollar out there to the students. So turn back to you, Amy.
All right, great. So staff recommends the board authorize the system president to approve matching requirements, parameters for each fund, and negotiate final appropriations subject to availability of funds, certify any required match for each fund as applicable, and the regional workforce plans to be funded by Workforce Training Rapid Response and Reboot, broadband, and healthcare funds as a part of the 2022 regular session of the Louisiana Legislature pending legislative approval.
A motion by Mr. Spahn, a second by Ms. Butler McIntyre.
Any disagreements? No.
Thank you.
Last item for board information is the National Center of Excellence for LNG.
All right, with that, I'd like to ask Chancellor Aspinwall, if you will, to join us and talk a little bit about the LNG Center of Excellence. But before he does, I think it's important that we recap a little bit of the work that has gone on in Southwest Louisiana. And you really can't tell the story verbally. You have to tell it with pictures, and that's what Chancellor Aspinwall will do here. Just a quick update on where we stand with Sewella and its rebuild. I think it's important before we begin to talk about Center of Excellence that people understand this college is back. This is not a college that's limping along that's interested now in a national center designation. This is a college that's gone out and in less than a year really did something miraculous. And so with that, Chancellor Aspinwall, I'll turn to you.
Price, President Sullivan, thank you again for allowing me to work in the system. But I asked Monty if he would just allow me to give you a little visual tour and visual update. You know, we're coming up on our second year anniversary. It's hard to believe, of Hurricane Laura and Delta. So I want to kind of give you a visual tour of what happened to us and where we are today. So I assume our clicker, if you can move me ahead, I would appreciate it. Next. Yeah.
The people from CSRS and Sissing messed it all up for us. They broke it.
Did the same thing. I was trying to figure out why you're pointing at the screen and the screen's not changing,
There
right?
you go.
Okay.
It wasn't the screen that changed.
There you go.
There we are, ready to roll.
Oh. Now it's ready. Okay, I bring this building up. This is what I call our poster child of hurricane damage. You know, when I came to Swella 10 years ago now, this is one of our first Stevie Act 391 buildings, only about 7 years old at the time, built to the modern hurricane standards. But when I stepped back on the campus on August 27th, 2020, this is what we saw. This was what was left of that building. You know, we still think there were some hurricanes associated with, or excuse me, some tornadoes associated with the hurricane. So you can see all the damage, what it did to that building. Our Claire story inside, we always wanted a sunroof, but not quite this way. So we got it whether we wanted it or not. And one last thing, I always like to show this out front of the building. There's a little shred of the American flag still there. So we took it down and kind of put it in our hurricane museum. But what began to happen is the engineers determined that the foundations and the structural steel frame of that building, although it was only 7 years old, was still good. So they began to systematically deconstruct the building and then to systematically reconstruct the building. So in December of 2020, they began to rebuild this building. And believe it or not, this past January.
Can you pause just 1 second? Did you say December of 2020, right?
December of 2020.
For those of you in the room that have been through this at Nunez, at Delgado, at a number of other institutions, recognize that this storm hit in late August. And in December, we had folks on the campus making repairs. That happened because a governor got involved, a commissioner of higher education got involved, a commissioner of administration got involved. We had biweekly meetings to sit down with each of those folks and have a conversation about what Swella needed. This administration, how many times did the governor pick up the phone and call you directly and say, Chancellor, how are we doing?
It was, you know, I can tell you, and I echo what Monty said, the state of Louisiana and the governor has been very supportive. You know, everything we've needed, they've provided. Tell you a little funny story that I was shortly after the hurricanes, I went home to visit my father, who was not very well at the time, when I was standing out in his backyard and my phone rang. And when I answered it, he said, hello, Neil, this is John Bell Edwards. And I almost said, sure, I'm Willie Nelson. So, but it was him. So, you know, he had called to say, whatever you need, we're going to be there. We're going to make this campus stronger than it was. And he's been true to his word. The state has been true to the word. So 12 months later, this is, you're looking at a 45,000 square foot building that originally took about 18 months to construct. They rebuilt this building in 12 months. You know, and the engineers and the architects and the contractors said, the next hurricane, you need to be inside of this building, because they added 200 tons of additional steel to make it stronger. I said, well, that's the building I want to be in next time. So this is a few of our other buildings. One of our other new buildings, AHC Drew Allied Health and Nursing. You can notice that many of the covered patios begin to collapse and fall. If the photo on your right attests to the strength of the winds, if you'll notice when you see a brick column that is bent and blown over, there were some strong winds there. But this is what it looks like today. You know, it's put back together and it's a beautiful building again. Our Charleston building, it looks like there's been a snowstorm out front, but that is roofing material. Once the winds got under these old flat roofs and began to pick this material up, it just ripped the roofs off of these buildings. So the picture on the right is what it looks like today. More photos of the Charleston building. We've since discovered that, you know, there's problems with the window systems in this building. And unlike you, or much like you, if you've dealt with your insurance companies, although the state of Louisiana is self-insured, we have ORM and Sedgwick who manages these projects. And we would constantly get the message that, you know what, we don't think this damage was caused by the hurricane, but we would say, well, it wasn't like this before the hurricane. So they've been very well, they've been very good to be very receptive, and everything that we've noted that's wrong with the buildings, they've begun to fix. Another one of our building, if there was any mechanical systems on the roofs, along with the roof, they came off. So this is one of our welding facilities that all the ventilation systems were blown off, but the picture on the right is it today. Another one of our buildings, you see those big chunks of roofing material that's out front. That's the roof of the building. Last building that's still standing, but it has been determined that it will be demolished. And you see the picture on the right is the artist rendering. And I appreciate Dr. Sullivan staying behind this. I think he has worn his welcome out with a couple of individuals that we keep asking, you know, what's the progress on this? But we're hope to see in the next couple of months this building to be demoed, and we'll start progress on the next building. Last, if you visited Swella, you notice we do have an aviation program, and this is one of our biggest billboards. a Boeing 727 jet, but it also had its day with the storm. It was broken loose from its anchors and blown across the campus. You'll notice on the left, the only thing that stopped that jet from going through the hangar was, if you'll notice, the landing gear hung on the curbing, and it stopped it from going through the building, but it's severely damaged. We have pulled it over in another part of the parking lot, but with FEMA money, believe it or not, it will be repaired. It'll never fly again, but it will be repaired. So 3 phases later and about $39 million, we still have phase 4 to go through. Our campus, I would say we're 90% rebuilt. And I can tell you again, I can't stress how much the state of Louisiana, I think they learned from Rita because they were on the ground very quickly. And no matter what those buildings needed, they've borne the cost of everything. So we're very thankful for that. So this is a picture. It doesn't seem significant, but as I was pulling this presentation together, there's some significance to this. This is a photo that was taken about 4 or 5 years ago. The gentleman that's standing next to me is the ambassador to South Africa, a Sasol representative and the African consulate. They visited our regional training center to view how we work with business and industry, develop partnerships, and develop training programs. And in the midst of the conversation, he asked me, he said, "Do you know what SWALA stands for?" I said, "Sure, stands for Southwest Louisiana." He said, no, in Zulu. I said, "I have no idea." He said, "It stands for we will cross over." So I said, how fitting. You know, I think we're at the point that we're about to cross over and we're getting back to where we were, and I say in 2019. So that's my little hurricane tour, and thank you for bearing with me. So, well, I thought it was over. One last picture. This is our last of our Act 360. This is our Culinary Gaming Hospitality Center. Even in the midst of all of these hurricanes, you know, it had begun construction, and it's continuing. We're off about 3 or 4 months on completion, but this is what it looks like as of last week. So Stevie, I hope in October, they've said that it will be ready and we'll open up and begin to do training for our culinary gaming and hospitality industry. Some of the programs we'll do. Any questions or comments, or I'll move on to our National Center. Okay, one of the main things I want to speak to you about, there was some national or federal legislation that was passed in December 2020, focuses on creating a National Center of Excellence for liquefied natural gas safety. This actually, it authorizes the DOT's Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration to establish this center in or near the Gulf of Mexico and a location determined by the Secretary of Transportation. The law does not specifically list Louisiana as a location, but it is favored because of 2 criteria set forth in the legislation. That is the central proximity to the infrastructure who deals with LNG and the top LNG production. And these are some things that it mandates. I won't go through all of those, but it's to help the U.S. federal government become more of an expert in LNG through performance-based principles, through experience and familiarity with LNG operational facilities, increased communication with LNG experts, acting as a repository of information on best practices, and facilitating collaboration between LNG stakeholders. And I go through this to tell you that SWALA is closely following the legislation. We've had conversation with Senator Kennedy's office. The LCTCS, Dr. Sullivan, is very supportive. We hope that when this federal legislation is finally enacted and the money begins to flow, that we'll be a part of this process. I'm confident that it'll be a consortium, probably of 2-year colleges and 4-year colleges. But my goal is to have this center, if it's built, a physical center built on the SWALA campus. So 2 considerations here in the legislation. It says, in general, the center shall be located in close proximity to critical LNG transportation infrastructure on and connecting to the Gulf of Mexico, as determined by the Secretary of Transportation. And also, the consideration, it must take into account the strategic value of locating resources in close proximity to LNG facilities, which we are, and the center must be located in the state with the largest LNG production capacity, and you can see as determined by certain cubic feet on the date of enactment, which was December 2020. And just a little news article. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, of the currently operating large-scale domestic liquefaction facilities, 9 are located in Louisiana and 6 are in Texas. Texas boasts larger scale production of dry natural gas, but Louisiana's output of LNG is greater, which puts us in a better position to have this center located in Southwest Louisiana. Now, the demand for LNG is expected to rise 20 to 50% by 2030. Southwest Louisiana is a prime location because there are 3 already operating: Cheniere Energy, Cameron LNG, and the newest Venture Global. And the ones you see at the bottom are planned facilities. There are 6 additional ones, and some of those have already began the process with the federal government. So again, it makes Southwest Louisiana a prime location for this facility. The little news article from CNN: the United States will be the biggest exporter in the world through 2022 as a whole, according to forecasts from that's the Independent Commodities Intelligence Service. So again, more proof that Southwest Louisiana is the best place to build this national center. A little background. In 2014, we were designated by the Louisiana Board of Regents as an industrial and process technology center of workforce excellence. And you see the programs that are there. So what we did is take the initiative. We knew that LNG was becoming a bigger part of the national economy and a bigger part of the Southwest Louisiana economy. We asked the Board of Regents last year to change our name of our facility, and they approved. So now we are designated as an industrial, process, and liquefied natural gas technology center of workforce excellence. And we began teaching LNG in our process technology curriculum in 2019. And with the generous donation from Cheniere of $500,000, we purchased a hands-on training unit. So we teach these skills in process technology now. You can see the enrollment in our programs are healthy, very healthy. The placement rate is very healthy, from Chem Lab, the lowest is about 85, 86%, up to 96, 97% industrial instrumentation and process technology. Last but not least, we started a TC Energy Pipeline Academy last year. It's a 10-week course. This is non-credit. We've had 3 classes completed, 1 class currently underway, and we've had 42 students complete the program. And Monty mentioned this, and just to kind of speaks to the nimbleness of not only Sewella, but all of our 11 community colleges. When an industry asks us to implement a program, we take them very seriously. So within a 2-year period, we planned, got approvals, not only from you, but the Board of Regents and SACS, and we started this program in fall of 2020. And we know what happened in fall of 2020. COVID was going on, Laura and Delta came along, we stopped the program, we restarted the program, and this past May, the first 7 students finished. And all 7 of those were employed before they graduated. So the program is needed. So any questions on that?
Questions from the board? A lot of information here. A lot going on at Sewella Technical Community College. I can't allow this one to pass, though, without mentioning the fact that this too plays into the energy discussion in this nation. This administration has a decision to make about liquid natural gas, and they still haven't made it. When they make that decision, I think what you're going to see is a shift that allows liquid natural gas to be the bridge to a different kind of energy circumstance. It's going to position, I think, Sewella Technical Community College in this system very, very well. For those of you with relationships in many of those delegations, both federal as well as within the industry, would love to have your support in working with Chancellor Aspinwall to get this done. Question or Supervisor Toops?
Oh, but I got to say, with Supervisor Mount not here, I feel like I'm the only one related close enough. The community is just crazy about this. I mean, the business community is behind it. The people you meet in the store, getting gas, are talking about what Sewella is doing. They're shocked that it's been rebuilt because there's still so much carnage all throughout the area from the hurricanes. Just the leadership, Doc, to make this happen is just amazing. Kudos to you and your entire team.
If you indulge me, one final video. It's a very short video that goes along with the article that you had. And Matthew, I had no idea that you would be here today, but this is very coincidental. So, sometimes we take for granted the importance of our community colleges and how they really change lives and how they provide opportunities not only to students, but their families. So I want to show you a short video. You have the article about the welding student at Sewella who was deaf. This very short thing or video or this program was picked up by our local television station. I'd just like to show you a very short video of what they thought about this.
The video.
This
Good.
very short thing or video or this program was picked up by our local television station. I'd just like to show you a very short video of what they thought about this.
The video.
That slide.
October is a month of awareness for multiple causes.
Brandon,
one of
we
those
can't
being
hear it in the
national
boardroom yet.
disability employment.
I ask everyone for their patience as we get this technology figured out. It's only our second time using the new technology, so thank you for your grace.
October is a month of awareness for multiple causes, one of those being national disability.
And then we still don't have sound inside the
It's
room.
a time used to highlight.
Thank you for your grace. And then we still don't have sound inside
The
the room.
contributions of people with disabilities.
Let's go ahead and pass. If we get the video back up and rolling, we'll circle back to it. Is that fair? Thank you, Dr. Aspinwall. Very much appreciated. All right. With that, Mr. Chairman, I think that concludes Supervisor Hardy's segment, and we'll.
Standing work, sir. Supervisor Jackson, would you present the facilities action items for consideration, please?
My pleasure, Mr. Chairman. First, let me just say personally, Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank you for your leadership over the last 2 years. I mean, you were truly the right man at the right time, and I just wanted to say that. Yeah, thank you. I think we have 3 items for facilities. The first item is Joe's there, so I feel good now. Property disposal for SLCC.
Sir, recently we've been approached, both the college and the systems office has been approached by parties that are interested in a site that SLCC has located at the foot of the New Iberia Airport. It's not on the airport itself, but it's at the foot of the airport, which still makes it a very attractive piece of real estate in a sense. It's a small location that's about 11,000 square feet on 5 acres, where SLCC provides avionics training for their helicopter program. Given the interest expressed at this site, what we're asking to come before the board to give us permission to dispose of the property in the event that the college wishes to proceed with that venture. One of the considerations that they have is that they are trying to find additional space to keep that program going, whether it's in the New Iberia area or more importantly at the Lafayette Airport. And as such, staff recommends that the board authorize Assistant President and Chancellor of South Louisiana Community College to complete all of the requirements and execute all documents necessary to dispose of property located at 1113 Vortex Drive, New Iberia, through the sale, transfer, long-term leasing, or exchange. Conveyance documents for the sale, transfer, lease, or exchange of this property or any portion thereof must be filed with the local clerk of court and the state land office.
Can we have a motion?
Motion by Ms. Bradford, second by Tim Hardy.
Is there any questions? Is there any objection? If not, a motion carries.
Chairman, if I may, just to reflect in the record, this recommendation is subject to the college finding adequate space for its existing aviation programs. I want to make sure that that is included as a part of the record, if you don't mind, Sarah.
Item 9, disposal of property at Louisiana Delta Community College, Bastrop, Camel Street Campus.
Yes, sir. If this looks familiar, it is. It's a technical correction to a previous board item that we had at the January meeting where you granted permission to dispose of this property. Unfortunately, while the motion implied some things, the lawyers wanted it more explicit regarding a 50-foot piece of property, a right-of-way that we wish to, or the college wishes to donate to the local police jury. We kind of got snagged around that cable, so to speak, when we actually tried to execute legal documents. And the lawyer said that we didn't have necessarily the explicit motion by the board to grant that authority. So we're coming back before you with that recommendation. As such, staff recommends that the board authorize the system president and the chancellor of Louisiana Delta Community College to complete all of the requirements necessary to transfer a portion of the Bastrop site located at 729 Camel Street, Bastrop, to the Morehouse Parish Police Jury. Conveyance documents for the sale, transfer, lease termination, or exchange of this property or any portion thereof must be filed with the local clerk of court and the state land office.
Thank you. You've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion?
Ms. Butler McIntyre, second by Mr. Smith.
Any questions? Any objection? Motion carries. Item 10, review and advisement preliminary capital outlay request for fiscal year 2023-2024.
Yes, sir. This is a procedural item that is being submitted for review and advisement. Every year, just as we do with the operating budgets, we also submit a proposal for capital outlay for the system and its colleges. Part of that process is we submit a preliminary recommendation, which is what you have before you for review and advisement. I will tell you that it is greatly subject to change to some extent, not that it's going to change drastically, but there will be probably some additions or modifications to it, at which point we will come before you at the August, or more importantly, the October meeting, more than likely, with a final recommendation. In essence, we have about $600 million in projects on this list. 123 million of them are currently continuing projects that we have approved for in the facility planning and control, and $450 million in new projects. So again, we're just submitting it for review and advisement. I please ask that you would look at it. If you have any questions, to give me or Anthony Brown a call, and we will bring this back before you for final action at the October board meeting.
The facilities reports.
Sir, appreciate the good work and the kind words. Supervisor Bradford, would you present the finance action items?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm happy to present the finance action items for consideration by the board. The first one is tuition and mandatory fees for academic year 2022 through 2023.
Ma'am, Supervisor Bradford and members of the board, we bring this item to you annually during the summer months to have you bless, so to speak, the tuition and fee rates for the oncoming academic year. And as we've done in the past, we are holding the line, recommending that there be no change to the base tuition and fee schedules of LCTCS colleges. That has been the case, thinking back probably to 2016, I believe, or thereabouts. As also a part of that action bringing before you is the board took action a couple years ago to suspend an online registration fee when COVID hit. There's a $40 fee that normally gets assessed to students when they register for purely an online course, not hybrid courses. So if they take a online course that requires them to come on campus, they don't pay this fee. But given that COVID was going on and we were moving completely to online delivery, the board, you took action to suspend that fee and to have it terminate this summer coming. Additionally, there have been discussions regarding dual enrollment tuition and fee assessments to those students. Historically, we've assessed a very low fee of approximately about $35 a student credit hour. Given that, again, finances are what they are, even though they're in good shape, and for equity purposes regarding students who are paying versus on campus versus those who are dual enrollment students, the chancellors have engaged in a discussion about what's an appropriate level to assess students who are dually enrolled. Also keeping in mind that through the MFP, the Minimum Foundation Program, through the Department of Ed, there's a lot of dollars associated with those students from a secondary side, roughly anywhere between $10,000 to $12,000 a year. So finances should not be an ultimate concern, although it is somewhat. So what we're doing today is basically three things. One is to recommend that we hold the line on our tuition and fee schedule for students. We are recommending that the suspension of the online registration fee be suspended as originally enacted by the board, and also authorizing chancellors to move forward with negotiating tuition and fee schedules for dual enrollment students out in those secondary school systems. So as such, staff recommends that the board not increase tuition and mandatory fees at LCTCS colleges for academic year 2023. Staff also wishes to notify the board that per board action at the June 10th, 2020 meeting, the $40 online registration fee suspension terminated with the spring 2022 semester and was reinstated for the summer 2022 semester. Furthermore, tuition and fees for dual enrollment students offered at LCTCS campuses will be at the regular rate, with courses offered at non-LCTCS campuses by non-LCTCS instructors at a minimum of $50 per student credit hour to be implemented no later than the 2023-2024 academic year. That's next year. Any agreements currently in negotiation between any LCTCS college and a secondary institution may be made effective for the 2022-2023 academic year this fall.
A motion to accept.
Motion by Ms. Carter. Is there a second? By Mr. Spahn.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Objections? Thank you. The motion passes. The next recommendation, revision of policy number 5.008, accounts receivable policy.
Yes, ma'am. We brought this before the board at a previous meeting for review and advisement, as is the process with all policies. You bring it once to the board for review and advisement and then follow up at a following meeting for action. And so we are coming before you with this item for action. If you may recall, this policy related to accounts receivables, there was prompted to be changed by a discussion about the use of transcripts as a vehicle to force students to pay who owed monies. There also was in place during this time a bill, House Bill 183 by Hughes, which was mandating that not only that happened, but that also other services couldn't be withheld from students, enrollment services and so forth. What we had proposed at our previous meeting and are still proposing today is that we are still recommending that even though we're not required by law, we think it best practice that we exclude the use of a transcript as a vehicle to collect from students. What was kind of in the wings, so to speak, was that Hughes required some other things. We were kind of waiting to see what happened with the bill. So the bill did not pass through the legislative process, and therefore it doesn't require us to change anything to our originally submitted draft of the policy. So we are holding the policy as it currently is. There's one minor technical correction that we did from before related to a requirement that we had in the policy from 2010 related to requirements that these policies would be approved by the state's cash management review board. We no longer require that per an AG opinion. So we struck that out, but it's again, just a technical education, does not impact or involve the body of the policy at all. So with that said, staff recommends that the board approve the attached revisions to policy 5.008, accounts receivable policy.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the floor?
Motion by Mr. Spahn, second by Mr. Hardy Roman.
Are there any questions? Objections? Thank you. Motion passes. Mr. Chairman, this concludes the finance report.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, Supervisor Tooth, would you present the governance action items for consideration?
Proud to, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Item number 13 for review and advisement, LCTCS Board Onboarding and Orientation Plan.
Sure, I'll take that one. As you'll recall, I believe Supervisor Hardy, Tim Hardy, it was Emily M. who joined us about 4 years ago, and we had a conversation about onboarding, about a mentorship kind of approach to new board members. This policy is reflective of that discussion and kind of a broader context of what policy we would like to put in place to ensure continuity, as well as to make sure that we are giving new board members the appropriate information they need to be effective. So again, the policy is for review and advisement only. We'll have an opportunity to review this one in advance of August. Any questions on that one?
Okay. Mr. Sullivan, if I'm not mistaken, this is also a best practices from one of the accrediting bodies, was it not?
Yes, that's correct. In fact, it is the best practice of all of what was formerly the regional accrediting bodies they adopted. So you're right on target. Just for the record, I'll read the recommendation. Staff recommends that the board accept for review and advisement the attached new LCTCS Board of Supervisors onboarding and orientation procedures.
I would just say,
It
sure,
is.
we accept it.
I think at this point, probably just duly noted.
Duly noted. Thank you for my correction. I appreciate it. And my last item, number 14, is nominations for the 2022-2024 LCTCS board officers. And for those of you who are here, this is not an exercise in you get appointed to something when you're not here. I assure you that Supervisor Mount is very, very excited about accepting the role of leadership of this board. And so we are proposing the new slate would be Supervisor Mount as chair, elevating Supervisor Jackson to first vice chair, and Supervisor Hardy Roman as second vice chair. And if you approve that, it allows our current chairman to be elevated to the position of immediate past chair. So that's the nomination slate that I present.
Those would be effective for 2 years, beginning July 1, per our bylaws. And we do need a motion for that.
We do need a motion for that.
Mr. Murphy has made that motion. Is there a second by all of you or just one of you? By all of you. Okay. Thank you so much.
Probably not a lot of discussion unless somebody wants to say something. Any objections? It passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Kleinpeter.
Very welcome.
Congratulations, Mr. Chairman.
Very much. All righty, Supervisor Hardy, Tim Hardy, would you present the personnel action items?
I would be honored, but as you probably suspect, I can't let this moment pass without taking some personal privilege and say a few words about our outgoing chair. I know people get a little nervous when I take the mic, but it's too late now. Let me just say a couple of things. Since I've been on this board for now over a decade, I have served with some outstanding chairs. Stevie Toops, Stevie Smith, of course, Mickey Murphy, who are here today, and there have been some others. Outstanding. They all have their own styles. Of course, I'm a past chair. But let me say this about Chair Price. Chair Price has served through one of the most difficult times in the history of the system, in the history of this country. Of course, I, like others have said, I'm kind of an introvert, right? But I will say that he is the epitome of still waters running deep. We've spent many hours over the telephone over the past couple of years, and I think it goes without saying, you're likely not to confuse the two of us. If we walked in a room, you probably wouldn't confuse him with me. If you try to know what's on your radio, but probably if you listen to what's on this radio, probably would be different from mine. We called you on the phone, you probably wouldn't confuse us, but let me say this. This man has thought so deeply, and he has had such great advice and counsel. As I said to others recently, he's talked me off the ledge a number of times. So I just want to say, on my behalf, I'm sure on behalf of others, we owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to Chair Price. And long after these days are over on this board, I will continue to consider you not only a former colleague, but as a friend. So thank you so very much.
I appreciate those kind of words. In your world and talking and that kind of thing, but I appreciate that very much.
All right. I struggle not to talk like I was talking to Supervisor Jackson last night. Okay. So personnel first is faculty pay plans.
Yes, sir. We are bringing before you, first as an information item, the legislature appropriated $6.2 million to the LCTCS, along with other higher education systems, received appropriations as well for faculty pay increases. We do not have currently at this time firm faculty plans, but we are coming before you to grant permission to Dr. Sullivan as system president to be able to receive those plans, to act on them, and with us to report back to you on what those plans are. As a note, there will be a focus on high demand occupations taught by instructors who are needed and so forth, first and foremost. within obviously allocations to other faculty as well. And on another note as well, just as a point of reference, when we talk about faculty increases or salary increases in general, whether they're faculty or not, well, one of the things that we have to be mindful are those associated related benefits costs. So that for every dollar that you may get for a faculty or salary increase in general, you ought to set aside 30 to 40% for related benefits. Just the retirement costs in and of themselves are that portion. So it's just giving you that piece of information if you're ever engaged in discussions about salary increases and so forth, what that really means. Back to the recommendation, staff recommends that the board authorize the LCTCS system president to approve proposed fiscal year 23 faculty pay plans of LCTCS colleges and to report back to the board at a subsequent date on the college plans.
Heard the recommendation. Is there a motion?
Motion by Ms. Carter, second by Mr. Jackson.
Motion and a second. Is there a discussion?
If I may, just want to acknowledge that this is the first time in the history of higher education in Louisiana that we have seen 2 years in a row of funding specifically line item allocated for faculty salary increases. And I may have that wrong going back to the Blanco years. Were there 2 in a row? I don't think there were. I think there was a year separating them. So the first time that we have had 2 years in a row, $60+ million across the state allocated toward faculty salary increases. So a big step forward.
Further discussion? Are there objections? Hearing none, then motion passes. Next item, pay equity study.
And I'll take that one. It was the January meeting of the Board of Supervisors when we came forward to the board with a series of contract recommendations for our 12 chancellors. And as part of that discussion, you approved unanimously the contract recommendations. But as part of that action, there was also a request from the board that we conduct a pay equity study as it relates to our chief executive officers, the 12 chancellors of our colleges. So following that January meeting, we engaged with the SSA consultants to conduct that review. Here today with us is Mr. Rudy Gomez, who has been certainly no stranger to this organization, someone that, if many of you recall, the Work Ready U plan that was developed in 2009, the gentleman sitting in front of us is the guy that wrote the plan. So Rudy has been deeply involved in this organization for a number of years, understands the work that goes on here, and certainly we appreciate your work around pay equity. And I'd like to turn it over to Rudy at this point for a presentation on the pay equity study conducted around CEOs.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to present this results today from this study. President Sullivan mentioned the Work Ready U, and we earlier mentioned Dr. Joe May, and I remember this is when we first met Monty, is when Dr. May brought him to our office to begin working on that. And the thing I remember most about that project is that Dr. May, who had worked very hard to get that program moved from the Department of Education to LCTCS, I was very proud of that, and he gave us the instruction to get started to design that program. And he said, we're going to get all the responsibility and at least half the money, and you guys need to design something that's going to work. And then he left, and we started, and Dr. Sullivan has understated his role in that, because he was with us endless hours designing that project over a period. I think Dr. May gave us 2 weeks to do it, and we did it at that time. So it's good to be back. This project is a compensation equity study that we did on the chancellor position alone. It's a general study. I'll walk you through what we found and how we looked at that information and have a few observations at the end. It's a general study. Did get this to work on first click, so I'm proud.
You're the training course already, right?
I'm proud of that. I was watching all morning the others. The basic we always start these projects with a basic demographic snapshot, looking at what is it are we evaluating, how does this how's this made up? The 12 chancellor positions, of course, and 11 have permanent appointments. 9 of the chancellors are male, 3 are female, 6 white, 4 African American, 2 are Hispanic. The years of experience of the chancellors, excluding the interim, ranges from 1.5 to 10.5 years. And 4 of the chancellors have less than 5 years of chancellor experience, and 7 have more than 5, and of those 3 have more than 10. And 4 of the chancellors have less than 5 years of chancellor experience, and 7 have more than 5, and of those 3 have more than 10. So the design, looking at how compensation is designed and how contractual agreements come about, there's a standardized contract document that's utilized for employment of the chancellors. There is a standardized performance review system in form that's utilized to look. It has the quantitative goals and expectations. It's used to compare to actual performance. And there's a scoring structure designed into that system that yields a numeric rating for each chancellor. And that system is actively being used to help the president and the board make these compensation decisions across time. The components of compensation include, of course, the base pay, its annual salary, a housing allowance, auto allowance, civic organization supplement, and a deferred compensation amount as well. The chancellors receive equal amounts for the housing allowance, which is currently set at $25,000, the auto allowance at $7,500, and the civic organization supplement at $2,500. The variations in the you'll see in total that gets represented in total comp is allowed in base pay and deferred compensation, and this variation in base pay and deferred comp really allows the system present to reasonably account for differences in chancellor experience, campus size and complexity, performance evaluations, retention issues, retirement outlook. It allows you to basically be in the market. There is a market for chancellors, as you know, of post-secondary institutions, and you always have to contend with the market, both to recruit chancellors and to retain them. And this part of that, the design of the system, provides you some room to look at the market and make decisions in that market. The compensation ranges currently for base pay of the chancellors is from 183 to 228. And so you have a top to bottom range of about $45,000. In deferred comp, again, excluding the interim, from 15 to 35, with a range of 20 therefore. And total comp, which is the most important thing to look at in our minds, it ranges from 233 to 291, yielding that top to bottom range of about $57,000. We looked at, and so once you sort of understand the basic system and all, you start looking for equity issues and to look at sort of subdividing the data that you have and seeing how those things play out across different categories. In this one, we looked at the white, Hispanic, African American divisions there in terms of, and you can see the base pay, the total comp pay, and the deferred comp pay as well. How those stack up. If you look at that, break that down by gender, you see the differences there. Conformity there. If you look at that by years of experience in the chancellor position, you can see the ones with more than 5 years, it's slightly elevated from the ones on average. This is averages of the ones with less than 5 years. I put this table in here to make a point. One, to look at this issue of college size and how that then sort of correlates with compensation rank. I created that on that column second from the right, the rank in terms of highest total comp to lowest. You see the fiscal year budgets attached to the various chancellors. I did that one from largest to smallest fiscal budgets, and then the total compensation numbers for the chancellors, and then the total years of experience. And if you look at that, you see how there are a variety of factors that come into play in terms of making these decisions and coming to decisions about total compensation. And it's very difficult and not really advisable to try and line up comp pay with any one variable, because what you're looking at in making decisions in the system that you have is a number of variables that are there. It should make sense when you look at it. It should pass the eye test in terms of averages and individual results. But you're going to be very hard pressed to look at one set of variables and make decisions about whether equity is there or not. You have to kind of look at all of them together. Our basic observations are that, one, we just wanted to make a comment about the diversity of the group in terms of white and African-American, Hispanic, male and female, experience levels. You have these different experience levels, which I know that President Sullivan deems very important, both experience and new blood and new ideas that come with new members that are new to the chancellor position, as well as leveraging the benefits of people that have time and experience in those chairs. The system for chancellor compensation has this uniform set of components to it for the smaller components of compensation and variable components as well in the base salary and the deferred comp, which can effectively facilitate compensation equity and allow you to be in this marketplace. And as you know, the market changes every day, and it changes from college to college as well. It's not always the same in every market in the system, and they change unevenly. And the flexibility there really we see as a positive thing. The compensation system is fully integrated into a metrics-driven chancellor performance management methodology, which again is another tool that allows you to effectively sort of meet the market, if you will, and create chancellor compensation for your chancellors. I think, and I've had this conversation with President Sullivan, I think the system that you have, particularly the performance evaluation system and how you use it, is an effective tool. We see, and we do various compensation studies for organizations all the time, and the most common problems I see that organizations get into with comps and comp equity is one of two things. One, they have a rigid system that is literally formulaic, and it's got some defined hard numbers, and the number they have for each position is that's the number. And there's no flexibility, particularly, and that's especially problematic when you get to the chief level in an organization. And organizations that have these sort of rigid, this is what it is, this is the number for this position, usually wind up have difficulty in the marketplace. They have difficulty recruiting the people they want. And then when they do manage to recruit or grow someone who's really good, they can't hold on to them because the rigidity of their system does not allow them to react in the marketplace when it's one issue we commonly see. The other one is that organizations build good systems that have fixed and variable components to them, like you have, but then they don't follow them. And they wind up making so many exceptions and sometimes just ignoring their own systems, and they wind up with things that are hard to defend in terms of equity, in terms of total spending sometimes for various positions. And from the information that we were provided, including some of the samples of the performance evaluation tools that you use, the system appears to be utilized the way it's designed. And that we think is the most important part of this. And it has a lot of these components that are standardized, but it allows that flexibility of judgment to make market decisions. And we can still look at the charts and the data and look at those numbers and those averages and say, does that pass the eye test in terms of equity? And in our minds, it very much does. So we don't see any real egregious or obvious individual compensation outliers. We look for those. We did not see that, nor did we see, and as you can see, the demographic averages that we looked at seem to pass the eye test as well. And we didn't see anything in there that was alarming to us, that would be sort of structural or systematic, that we would want to do or suggest to you that you do some sort of broader investigation or redesign relative to how chancellor compensation is handled. We all in all, I thought it looked quite good. I thought it looks like it's being run the way it was designed, and it looks like the design is producing equitable results and the flexibility you need to actually be in the marketplace. So those are our basic observations. I'd be glad to take any comments or questions.
Thank you for the presentation. I want to acknowledge Gina Doucette, who has done an incredible job working alongside you as our Chief Human Resources Officer. But I'd like to pause for a minute and give credit to this board. This board has diversified its ranks at the CEO level, probably as much as anyone in the country. We have raised compensation for the CEO role as much as anybody in the country. And the results show from today's presentation that we've made significant progress on the equity front. Those are three things that are really difficult to accomplish, any one of them at one time, much less all three at once. So very much appreciate the work that Rudy and his team have done. One of the things that I would like to suggest to the board is that this is a regular item that we look at and that we come back with similar metrics to you so that you see where we stand as you make those decisions. That way it's not a hindsight view, it's a formative review along the way. And so we'll continue to keep those out in front of you. So stop there. Any questions from the board? Comments from the board? Rudy, can't thank you enough. Very much appreciated and look forward to continuing this dialogue. I will say to board members, I did forward you an email. I think it must have been on Monday. And in that email, I've shared with you a little bit of this work, kind of a pretext to Rudy's presentation. And as you'll note in the email, I framed this discussion around a very key point. In 2014, when this board approved our Louisiana 2020 as the strategic plan for the system, one of the things that we also did was adjust the chancellor evaluation policy and the compensation policy. We split those two apart, and we were very specific in saying that chancellor evaluations would be driven by largely performance, not to suggest to the exclusion of any other, but that it was about performance. And I think I remember our good friend and colleague, Woody Ogier, who was chair at the time, who made it clear that college chancellor evaluations shouldn't be a popularity contest. It's not about who is liked the most. It's about who's performing, just as it is in any other role in our organization. And so we have adopted that. That is largely what has driven us to this point. If this board has an interest in going a different direction, then let's talk about it. And we certainly can do that at a subsequent meeting. But I think it's important that we follow on to that and either affirm that path or adjust that path one way or the other. Fair enough? Thank you again, Rudy. Appreciate it.
Next, I hereby request a motion to enter into executive session to discuss items I-17, update on chancellor searches, and I-18, pending and potential litigation. Do I have a motion?
Motion by Mr. Toops and second by Mr. Spahn. I'll do a
Second.
roll call vote. Supervisor Price, Supervisor Jackson. Yes. Supervisor Bradford. Yes. Supervisor Butler McIntyre. Yes. Supervisor Carter. Yes. Supervisor Roman Hardy. Supervisor Tim Hardy. Supervisor Murphy. Supervisor Spahn. Supervisor Toops. Supervisor Durrett. Supervisor Jimenez. Mr. Chairman, we do have a unanimous vote to enter into executive session, and I'd like to note for the record that Supervisor Smith did leave the meeting prior to the last item and will not be joining us. We're in executive session as of 12:43. In executive session as of 12:43. And then can you take the executive session sign off of YouTube? Thank you. And we're back live on YouTube. Thank you. I don't know, Brandon, were you able to get the video? Will we be able to see it later? And if not, I can email the video to everybody. Okay, Mr. Chairman, we are ready when you are.
Ma'am, would you call roll, please, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Happy to call roll. It is 1:28 p.m. and we are exiting executive session. Supervisor Price.
Here.
Supervisor Jackson.
Here.
Supervisor Bradford. Supervisor Butler McIntyre. Supervisor Carter. Supervisor Roman Hardy.
Here.
Supervisor Tim Hardy. Supervisor Murphy. Supervisor Spawn. Supervisor Toops. Supervisor Durrett. Here. Supervisor Jimenez. Here. Am I saying that right? Mr. Chairman, you do have a quorum of the board present to exit executive session. Am I saying
Hey,
that right?
thank you, Sarah. The meeting is now reconvened and no votes were taken and no consensus was reached during the executive session. Supervisor Hardy.
Hardy, can you talk into the microphone?
I think maybe the appropriate way is the board heard in an executive session an update on chancellor searches as well as a pending and potential litigation update. And with that, I think that concludes the work of Chair Hardy.
Very good. It's been a long day, okay. At this point, I would like to present to everyone the consent agenda items for consideration by the board.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, recommendation reads, staff recommends that the board approve the consent agenda, which consists of agenda items J1 through J5, as you see listed there.
Is there a motion?
So by Ms. Butler McIntyre, second by Mr. Toops.
Motion and seconds, any discussion, any opposition? Hearing none, that motion carries. Okay, at this point, I would like to reference updates and encourage board members to review the information provided. Is there any additional business to come before the board? Hearing none, are there any announcements to come before the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to
Yes.
note for the record that we did not have any requests for public comment prior to the start of the meeting or throughout the duration of the meeting.
Good. Any announcements? Okay, at this point, I would like to request a motion to adjourn.
Motion by everybody to adjourn at 1:30 p.m.
Thank you. We are adjourned.
All right, drive safe.
And in